Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, Mark. Good, thanks. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. How's everything?
It's going well.
Where do you work again, John?
There's a firm in Windsor, architecture.
Yeah, I don't think I know them. Do you do you have any colleagues from that firm that are from Lawrence Tech, or and if they are, that might recognize my name?
I've brought up your name with a couple of my colleagues there, and I think they were there. Well, they never had you when they were there, but there's a lot of them that went there. Almost like the two partners went to Lawrence Tech. That's going like way back.
Yeah, but I am way back. So who are they?
Dan Amiconi and um, Carmen Brunone.
No, I don't know. So there
That's
must be
going way
like
back. Not that
there must be like
you're
a
not.
lot of Italians in Windsor.
Yeah.
So I I was in I was in school with Dominic Cristofaro. He's a couple of years younger than me, and he's an architect with Gensler. And for years, you know, he commuted to Gensler from Windsor, but now he's picked up his family from Windsor and moved to Vegas because he likes the warmer climate. And
Yeah.
so he works in the Gensler office there. And then Robert DeMaio.
Oh yeah, I worked at Archon a couple years ago.
So Bob and Dominic were like, Doug and Bob McKenzie. They kind of drove to school every day and then drove home every day, right? And talked about Molson Canadian. And you're probably too young to know who Bob and Doug McKenzie are, but they were good friends in college, and I know Bob has become a very successful architect in Windsor, where he's been really his whole time.
Mackenzie like sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Bob and Doug McKenzie is a skit.
Oh, okay.
Bob McKenzie is also an announcer for hockey games.
So while we're in class tonight, fire up a skit of Bob and Doug McKenzie. They were part of the Second City, and so let me do that because it wasn't John Candy, who was also Canadian, I thought. Yeah, here it is.
Bob and Doug McKenzie.
Yeah.
Clips of this.
Oh, that is that. I've seen these guys.
Of course,
Oh,
you're Canadian. For crying out loud, of course you. I think they're like part of your country motto or something.
You got that American beer there. That's what is that? Only 3%, eh?
Yeah.
So yeah, the Great White North. So who? Oh, it was Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis.
Right? Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Rick Moranis.
Oh, that's Rick.
And in not Alien, but in Ghostbusters, he was Zozier or whatever. He was the little guy, right? That had that went to the gatekeeper. That went to Sigourney Weaver, right? That's Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That's
two of Canada's finest.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well that was fun, and then of course, there is the movie Canadian Bacon, right, where Alan Arkin, the president of the United States, decides to bomb, Niagara Falls and incite a war between Canada because just because we needed a movie about it. So yeah, that was pretty. Rhea Perlman is in that. That was pretty cute and fun. And then there was another. Oh gosh, the Slapstick, a Paul Newman movie about three brothers called the Hanson brothers that are actually pretty accomplished hockey players in their own right. And in 1976 or 1977, they were kind of like making a cameo appearance as these three roughneck hooligan hockey players that, regardless of the team or the game or the possibility that they might even win, they would just like throw off the gloves and get into these knockdown, drag out fights, blood and teeth flying, and it was sort of a commentary about the deterioration of hockey as we know it, bribery and wagering on games and all of that. So the Hansons are, I think, from Canada as well, or if they're not, they should be. So that's actually a really good movie to watch, and if you haven't seen that, but and then my favorite sort of Canadian connection besides Bob DeMaio is Rich Turfry and Raina Duras, who I listen to every morning and every afternoon. So I don't know if you catch their programs. They're on CBC Radio 2.
Radio 2.
Yeah. Best station in town, by the way. Okay, so yeah, you should turn them on. They're that's good stuff.
Okay.
Rich Turfry is in the afternoon, and then Raina is in the morning. Yeah, like 5 in the morning.
Alrighty. 5 in the morning. Did you say 5?
Yeah, I'm up at 5 every day. Usually a little earlier. Yeah, I'm at work early, and I drink I drink a lot of coffee. So Andrew and Desmond, we're going to be talking today, but I don't see Desmond here yet.
She should be on her way any moment.
Okay, thanks. So Andrew, can you demo and rebuild my bathroom as quickly as your Instagram post assures me to do? I watched it just a minute ago.
Oh yeah, I put all the recent stuff on there.
Dude, you have to move to Detroit where there's like this plethora of project opportunities for you and your company here.
It's already too busy. I can never catch a break here. So it's one idea.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's pretty if you all haven't seen his business website, at the risk of embarrassing you, I'm going to suggest that share your link, right? Your website link, Andrew, with the class. His work is really, really fine, and it's worth seeing and dreaming that it could actually play out in your own homes. And the reason I say dreaming is because there's just no way he's going to do it because he's in Connecticut. If you haven't figured that out, and it's worth looking at. So congratulations. Let's get started, Desmond. I see you're here. And you all perhaps have seen some of the conversations that have played out, from the first 3 groups on Tuesday night. So if you want to pick up where they left off, that would be great. I would mention that I'm glad that even if you don't have a crit scheduled for tonight, or even if you do, that you kind of hang around and listen in on the conversation, because there are things that I say and broadcast out that transcend the conversation that I'm having, for example, with Andrew and Desmond right now. So you pick those nuggets up along the way. And if you're here now and you wonder if this continues throughout the semester, I would say yes. So it makes sense for you to sort of somehow pay attention to what's happening in the studio in much the way, right, that conversation in a traditional architecture studio space, like on a campus, might play out, where the professor meanders around from desk to desk or group to group, and then occasionally throws out 1 or 2 dark pearls of wisdom that can maybe benefit the others in the class. So I believe that it's useful that way. That way I don't have to say the same thing, 7 times, right? So if you want to screen share, Andrew or Desmond, who wants to take control of our conversation right now?
I guess I can go with my document first, and then we'll switch over to hers if that's okay.
Perfect.
So it is on Google Drive also if you're interested.
Let me do that. I have so many folders I can never remember where they are. Okay.
It's under.
Are we module 2, Deskrits?
Should be, yes.
I see it.
Do you want me to screen share also, or?
So I have a lot of a lot of folders here, or a lot of plates here. What should I look at?
So the first one that we're looking at is draft.pdf.
So I'm seeing diagrams.
Yes.
So ramps in a space, diagram. Should I look at diagram 1?
Yes, we'll look at the top of that first. So this was basically just some part that we were trying to get as like a starting process for the form itself. So we wanted to have some kind of access all the way around and something that was like a circle or a U shape. So we tried to go with a U shape. And then I guess we kind of wanted to jump just to like an idea of what a floor plan could be and explore that before we went too far. So if you see on the way top right, there's that diagram that says how wide the apartments are, how wide the egress are.
So I want to make sure I'm looking at the right plate because again, I'm not sure I'm on the right one.
Oh, okay, I could screen share too just to make sure.
No, I think I am now. I'm at diagram 5.
No, it should be a draft.pdf.
I don't have that in there. So go ahead and screen share.
Okay, sure.
Oh, his is diagram 5. So she just corrected me. So I'm there.
Oh, okay. It must have been changed. Okay, sorry about that. So the first section that says form, I was just explaining the one on the way right of that has a color diagram with the text coming out. So we took that U-shaped form that we were looking into, and we were trying to think how we could divide that between the apartments, the egress, and everything. So we first added in, the stairs and the elevator as a starting point, and then we had an idea. Let's take that overall, like the U shape, and put 25 feet as a width for the apartments, and then add a 6-foot egress route all the way for a hallway, and then do another 25-foot for the apartments, and that gives us a center area, which will be an open area throughout each floor. So that was like a starting point that we went to. And then if you go down to the next box that says rotate, we took that U shape, and as we go up each floor, we rotated that shape 90 degrees to kind of offset the way that each floors are, and also change the way that the space is as the floors go up. And then the third box, when you go down, it says egress. So those are, again, just showing the different ways of egress, the elevator, the 2 staircases, and how those play out on each floor if we did something like this with the shape and with the rotation that we're proposing.
So you just used a really important word. It's a really small one. It was if, right? If we did something like this. So is this an iterative process for you guys that just shows an idea and explains it out to its limits, maybe not working everything out, for example?
Pretty much. I think we wanted to just have an overall idea of where we are going from and get your advice, go from there. But this was just, I guess, one iteration before we get too in depth to figure out the design. So
let me comment, if I may, if you're done. I know there's other drawings, and we can certainly
of course, either way,
talk about those. So I want to talk about form and the assumptions that they're in. The dimensional notations that you make there, I think, are pretty. They're good instincts. I think they represent pretty good things overall. If you have a 25-foot width, I think you mean that to be depth, for example. Is that more correct?
That's correct.
So someone's microphone is. So what were the sizes of like the 1-bedroom apartments, Andrew?
Let's see. As far as
what were they in our program?
Program, I'll take a look.
Or anyone? What was the square footage of those that we recommended?
I see that it says 50 units. I don't see recommended.
Maybe at the bottom of the page,
Area.
Roger.
Areas that are shown are percentages.
Yeah, it shows it for the exercise room and everything square footage, but I'm not seeing it for the apartment.
Yeah.
Really?
It says for the ceiling height, 9 feet for residential and ground floor 12 feet, but I'm looking at the actual surface area, I don't see anything.
Okay, I'm opening it up. Okay, so you're absolutely correct. And so I think one of the things that you have to do is come to terms with what 43 one-bedroom units is like as a mass in the building, and just the same thing with the two-bedroom units. And so targeting now, like you are, the actual, for instance, is a really good way to do that. And if that depth is 25 feet, if you assume that an apartment is 650 feet, 650 square feet, right? That means it's like 25 by 25 or 25 by 26. So that's kind of the height of a one-bedroom apartment. Could be 700 square feet. What is it if it's 700 divided by 25? 28 square feet. So 28 along the facade, 25 feet in depth, right back toward that common corridor. That gives you about a 56-foot wide building block, right, in depth, right? That's the length of the leg in the C or the U. Those are pretty good dimensions. The 28-foot works pretty well with a structural system. 30 feet works really, really well, you guys, for a structural system for parking down below. So if you have 650 square feet for an apartment that's one bedroom divided by 30 square feet or 30 linear feet, that's about 22 feet deep. So instead of 25, it's like 22. That's what I come up with. So 22 times 2 is 43 plus 6, your corridor. That's about 49 feet. So that could be the depth. Do you understand what I just did there? I went through some permutations on depth and length of the unit.
Makes sense.
And then so a depth dimension, like setting now a depth dimension, helps you understand the thickness of the bar in your C, in your U, right? I might also, just in parenthetically here, if I was a developer, I'd probably like go 6 feet. I can't rent that space. Can't we make that 3 feet? You know, so like, no, we can't make it 3 feet, because if you and I are passing in the hall and you're walking a German Shepherd, you know, what am I supposed to do? Back up and, you know what I mean? How do we pass, right? So 3 feet doesn't work. 3 feet doesn't work, for instance, to move a couch into.
It was
6.
at 8. We went down to 6. Is that an average?
6 is a little rich.
A little rich. Okay.
5 could work. 5 could work. 5 works all day long. And then you can do things, right, where you might have 4 doors of 2 units, like A and B units, where the doors are on the demising wall, so that, and then you mirror them on the hall, and so you have 4 apartment doors clustered together, right? Like at a hotel, maybe, you know, like at the local Hyatt, and then maybe those are set in like a foot. So at the nodes of where doors are, you could mug a little space from the unit itself, set it in 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches to create kind of an enlarged alcove, if you will, right? And this is an especially useful strategy for particularly long buildings, like a Hyatt Regency, for example, where it just, or a dormitory, where it just goes on and on forever. So that's one parenthetical that I wanted to go through. The U-shaped bar, I think, is a really solid place to start because it allows you to get more units on more outside surfaces with more corners and more positive corners versus more sort of negative corners, right? Inside corners.
And then each place has a window view technically too with that, since there's, you know, both sides.
Yes. Now, the issue with your top diagram is that if we're talking about a U or a C, and Desmond, can you just give me a thumbs up? I want to make sure you're hearing all of this, right? Because, okay, so
yeah, I got it.
Thank you. So in that U, you're showing the elevator where my thumbs kiss, right? That's fine. That makes sense, because if I discharge from the elevator and I live over here or over here, right? I have as far to walk from either side, right? So that's groovy, right? That works nicely. But the stairs, ladies and gentlemen, create long dead ends on the legs of the C. You're limited in that dead end length to 50 feet, right? So that means that in any U, whether it's rotated this way, this way, this way, or this way, the stair needs to be at the end of that cul-de-sac, that at the end of my fingers here and here, or 50 feet from a place where I have two choices. So you can only have a 50-foot dead end. I think your lengths, your finger lengths in this diagram that I'm drawing with my hands is exceeding it. And then it's made more complicated when you go through those permutations, because the stairs, as you're saying in the egress diagram, in that register of egress, that the stairs work for each of those where you've shown it, but it doesn't work for all of them. That's the issue. So how do you solve that issue? You do two things. One, you add an extra stair wherever you need it. So now you might actually need 4 stairs. So the developer's going to scream, right? And you're going to scream because that's going to wreak havoc, right, in your units and as they're making their way down. Or you only do 2 moves. You don't do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, I guess instead of 4 rotations for the res floors, maybe you only do 2. And maybe they're like this. One's like this, and then one's like this. The minute you rotate one against the other, I think it works. I think it wreaks havoc on the egress strategies.
That definitely makes sense. We could change that
Do
around.
you follow what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Okay. So, so what I really like about what I'm seeing right now is that, and I love how you all are like approaching, like Trevor and his team the other night approached it from like a kind of like urban energy. You know, when Alec and Trevor were talking about the massing diagram that they had, they were interested in letting the mass be influenced, right, by the energies and the vectors and the rays and the line alignments of the context. That's a very interesting thing. And I hope that at some point, you know, that bears some fruit. But like in your approach, your approach is to say, okay, so I'm going to design a building with brick, so I better pick the brick. And I better know how big the brick is. And I better know what happens when I do this, and when I do this, or when I do this, or when I do this, or when I do this with the brick, right? That's a brilliant design strategy, you guys. I think this is a really important first move out of the gate. So you're trying to understand the building in its sort of unitized sort of way. I think this is a really important way to do it. So I really value that strategy. So I know I kind of derailed the longer conversation, but I would say that in A6, the building that we're doing on the other side of City Modern Detroit, the much bigger building, east of your site, you guys, we did the U shape, and we did just what you did. We took a C shape this way and oriented it that way on the site against John R. And then we put another C on top of it like this, right? To create the courtyard at the residential floors. So the ground floor was 1C where it was oriented, where the void was facing east. And then the residential floors, instead of doing a courtyard, it was just replacing it and stacking it, if that makes sense. And that allowed us to solve the circulation problem that I just alerted you to in a pretty easy way. We still had 3 stairs, however. You just need to know that.
So where did you put your staircases?
In the 2 corners and in the middle. In the 2 ends or legs, at the ends of the legs where the fingernails are, right? And then somewhere along the unifying leg, the leg that united the other 2 that were remoted.
Can I ask a quick question, Mark?
Yeah, this is good.
So if you have a unit at the end of your corridor, that does not add towards your total distance, correct?
No.
Okay.
So imagine walking down that corridor, and at the end of the corridor you have a cul-de-sac, right? Where you have maybe 2 doors, Trevor's and then Stefan's unit, right? That's where those guys live. But that corridor's length without a second means of egress is limited to 50 feet in residential occupancies and in business occupancies. In assembly occupancies, like a theater or a banquet hall, it's 20 feet, right? So you can walk down that dead-end corridor by virtue of what the code says for 50 feet before you realize, oh crap, there's no door down here. I better turn around and hightail it out of there because I'm in a fire mode, right? I'm in an evac mode. Now, the other way to solve that is just to put a stair at the end of the corridor, right? But ladies and gentlemen, stairs at the end of the corridor are also stairs on the outside leg, right? Again, it's the stair at the fingernail. And what does that mean? It means that the stair's kind of showing up on a facade that maybe you don't want it to be expressed on the street or on the sort of architecture. So a lot of times architects will embed that stairway to like the first unit in. That's another solution. And if you look at some of the previous schemes that we had last semester, I think you'll see that. You need 2 elevators. Make sure you supply that, right? Because this is a rental property. And what I want you to appreciate is that when Nora's moving into the apartment, she's going to hijack that elevator for a whole day.
Does one need to be larger, like the commercial freight elevator?
It doesn't need to be larger in footprint. It just needs to be an elevator with a hi-hat. And I think the program brief talks about that. Meaning, you guys, that elevator will have some hooks built into the spec, right? And then the maintenance guy, right, will hang the moving blankets with the grommets on it, right, to protect the interior of the elevator, so that Nora and that enormous, I'm picking on you, Nora, that enormous goldfish tank that she's got, when they kind of try to move that into the elevator, it doesn't, muck up the stainless steel, right? That's the finished surface, right? So you need a hi-hat to slip beds, bed frames, sofas, armoires, those kinds of things. The elevator size is limited or legislated by the barrier-free code, though. So you need to be able to get a gurney. So you can't just pick like a one-man or a two-person elevator. You have to pick one that allows an EMS, a fireman like you, to move a gurney right into that elevator and rotate it around so that you and your colleague can stand there while you're, taking a dead body like mine out.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So my point, and I want you all to appreciate this for this semester. My point is, you're going to need to make a decision really quick. Not just you two, but all of you all will have to make very quick decisions on where your project's going to go, right? Because we're having a pinup in about 3 weeks. My suggestion is to go with your instinct, review it with me, and we'll sign off on it together. I don't want you to keep going through multiple iterations for the rest of the semester. You just don't have time to do that. And I want you to sort of try to approach this as not only quickly and efficiently as you can, but try to approach things as simply as you can. There's going to be time to do a much more complicated, Co-op Himmelblau, Zaha Hadid, kind of building in your career. This may not be the semester you want to do a building that looks like a potato chip or 3 pieces of fettuccine noodles. This is not the semester, right? Okay, what other plate do you want me to look at?
Okay, you can go ahead and look at the, we can start with the first one in there, the one that says copy of diagram.
I'm there.
Okay, so this was a little precedent that we looked at to see kind of what kind of elements, I guess, contemporary retirement homes were doing. So like with the openness of it and shape, and I particularly liked the pop color that it had because
I'd live
was a little
here.
bit of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think that like in general, when people think of retirement homes, they think of like dull old places, and they shouldn't be like that. So
I think as a case study, it's a really interesting one. It picks up on a couple of things that we saw in the Stanley Sadowitz piece, where they had those large 1- and 2-story incisions that created like little backyards, but in the
pockets.
within, like those void pockets, those negative spaces that became kind of a positive virtue in the sculptural mass of the building. So where do you live again, Desmond? You're in West Bloomfield, did you tell me?
Yes.
So West Bloomfield looks like every city in the country, right? 155 or 150 foot wide lots, 200 feet deep, right? 3-car garages, lots of lawn area. You have to use like a tractor mower to mow it, right? It takes the whole day to mow the lawn. So, and then that's kind of the repeating pattern. And that lawn area, particularly in the back garden, is your family's like outdoor living room. So too, in this building, for example, that void space is the living room, right, for this senior citizen community. So when you see things like that, when you see a village in the sky, right, or when you see a neighborhood in a building like this, that's why they're doing these things. I want you to like detach yourself from that West Bloomfield context, right, and transport yourself to like this urban context where we don't have 150 foot. I mean, your property is probably, where you live is probably as large as this site. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, all day long. All day long. Where I live in Royal Oak, it's probably 3 side-by-side lots because we have platted neighborhoods that are much denser. But that's probably how large this site is. So imagine like a building like this, right, going onto your site, onto your property at home. Okay, what's the next plate?
All right. Then you can go down and look at the 2 that say ramps in a space.
Okay, I'm going up to the first one.
All right. So these were from my ID2 project. I know in the last lecture you were talking a lot about how the ramps were used like as a space as well as like a way to transport places, and that's kind of like what the basis of this project was. So we haven't really gotten much into it, but I want to think of a way that we can incorporate that idea into our building.
So what I value about this is not, I mean, the drawings are beautiful, right? The section, the evocative like hall and space models. But for me, it's the plan. Why? Because the plan actually here aligns with oh God, I can't move my mouse here for some reason. It aligns right with what Andrew was showing us in his CU, UC drawings, right? Yeah. So I think if you were to do a diagram like what he did of this building, of your Tibetan Buddhist piece, it's the same diagram, right? So there's that coincidence, I think.
Right.
Move my mouse back, diagrams, ramps in space. So this is another picture of it, right?
Yeah, that's a picture of the model from it.
Is this a large model?
Yeah, it was a quarter scale. And it was in Detroit too. Well,
who did you do that with?
I laser cut the sheets.
No, who was your professor?
Oh, that was Pandish.
Oh, I don't know that name.
He was really chill. Okay, and then we can move to diagram 1.
Okay, I just opened up diagram 4, so I'll go back.
Okay.
So this is kind of a color-coded drawing that shows what Andrew had, right?
Right. It's showing kind of how the different floors would interact on top of each other. So like showing the different movements between them in like a color-coded way, just so that it's easier to see.
Mm-hmm.
So then we can move into the one next to it, diagram 2. And this shows kind of what we wanted to occupy each space with programmatically. Like the whole time, I just kept thinking about like what old people need. So we looked up some stuff that, they'll require for older living, like the anti-skid floors, the places to rest a lot, libraries, etc.
So, so I'm looking at Site in Context right now, which is number 4, and I think you have to make a determination. One of the things about your diagrams is that they don't like indicate where we are in context, like relational to, say, north, south, east, west, Alfred, John R., the vacant lot, the alley, that kind of stuff. So I think you need to pretty quickly deliberate on and share with each other what you're going to do. Where is the, so if it's the U for the res floors, you need to make that decision, right? So let me use my diagram again. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but if you use the U like I'm showing with my fingers and my hands together, where the thumbs kiss, right? If the alley is at the fingertips, that means that this leg is on John R. and this leg, right, is Alfred. And from an urban design perspective, you guys, all of you guys, there is a sense or a position, particularly in new urbanism and in good urban design, that buildings meet the street wall, that buildings hold the edge of the property, right? So that means that you would have a building mass on John R. and you would have a building mass on Alfred. So right now I've defined an L building. And y'all may be able to get 4 floors of residential with 50 units in an L. It might work. They might be small, right? They might have 4-foot corridors. It might be an L with a little serif at the end of it. You know what I mean by that? Remember that phrase in font design, type design, where yeah, there's a little it might have a little appendix on it, right? Just like, so the L may turn the corner just a skosh or a bit, right?
So like a J.
It's like a J. Yeah, thank you. You should be teaching this class. But you may be able, right? You may be able to get all of the units in an L. You may not, so it may have to go to a J. It may need to go to a C. But I think you need to, whatever letter it goes to, right? I think you need to make up your mind where the legs of that J or L or C actually sit. And an urban design critter, right? A critique from an urban design position or perspective will say, well, I got to have 2 legs on the L, on the intersection. I got to have the long legs on John R. and I have to have a long leg on Alfred. So how does that work for you? Not only in terms of like unit design, which I think it will, but how does that work for you from the perspective of solar heat gain, for wind, for climate, for HVAC? So that may present some challenges for you. The other option is to say, if those criteria are such that they're so important to you that I'm willing to like push down the critique of the urbanist and say that nothing's more important than orientation to the sun and a better building orientation due to lighting and wind strategies, for example, daylighting strategies, wind and climate strategies, which I think is an equally important decision. Ultimately, it's a decision the design team needs to make. Then maybe the U, the J, the L, right, needs to sit on the alley and John R. Right? So the orientation, right, for where the residential program goes is something you need to deliberate on. And you need to make that choice pretty quickly, you guys. An urbanist would say on Alfred and John R. An environmentalist or a sustainability expert might not agree with that. I don't know what they would say, honestly. I think the research programs that you went through are giving you some clues, and I think you need to validate that. Now, there's one more thing. Depending on the J or the U option, you need to respect the property line to the west. Because if you have apartments on the west property line, those units need to be stepped back from that property line a certain distance, lest they have a limitation on the amount of windows. So you can have building mass, you can have residential program. And again, I'm only talking about residential program, but you can have residential program on the west property line, but it trips another threshold that you need to design for, right? Now, that's the discussion for all of you all on the program of residential. You go to the ground floor, and I'm going to get back to that in a second. You go to the ground floor, and I gotta believe, based on the site plan that I gave you and all the clues and the colors that I've like landed in your lap, that you understand that it's an L, that the ground floor program sits in an L on Alfred and John R. right? Because the speed ramp has got to come off the alley, and it's probably got to come off of the west property line or run along the west property line, right? So here's that residential program, Alfred, John R., and then here's the alley, right? And then here's that speed ramp, and that completes the cloister. That completes the square. I'm trying to make this site plan really easy for you so you can like deal with the other issues. Don't fight that. Now, bear in mind the conversation about orientation and the letter U/C, J, right? Or L. Think about all of what I just said relational to the parking floor. Because when you start thinking about the speed ramp coming into the basement level and the columns that need to support the first floor and the residential floors above, you want to make that as straightforward as possible. So try to get things to line up. Try to get things to be straightforward. Are you all following what I'm saying? Andrew, you got that?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay. That's not only comments for you, but that's for all of you guys. I think it's really kind of a critical sort of consideration. There's so much that you all have to juggle this semester that innovation in how to lay out the ground floor is not, it's not where to put the innovation, right? So let me remind you of Beth Whitaker's lecture last, I guess it was like last April, last March. Did you all see her lecture? Okay,
I did.
so
I saw it.
okay, so she used, thank you. Let me send Jess another thing. She used a phrase called core project. Do you remember that? Core projects. So like, you know, as a small firm, she was starting out, she got small commissions, small buildings, small spaces, small renovations, small budgets, right? So they decided that maybe a way to approach these kinds of things where there's lots of restrictions, where there's, in your case, lots of responsibilities, you kind of say, okay, I'm not going to fight all these things. I'm just going to imbue design in one area, right? A core project. So like in a building that she did in Boston, a small 3-story mixed-use building, it was only on the facade. And that's where she poured out the content of the design, right? That's where it mattered. And she made that so compelling that the contractor couldn't cut that stuff out of the budget because it was the essence of the project. So go back and listen to her lecture. It's pretty short. And I think you'll just love the way she presents. But the idea here is like, don't try to be so innovative in all of this stuff, because you're going to find that you can be innovative in other places in other ways, right? And you can do that by applying the sort of the design theory of core project. All right. Any other questions, Desmond, Andrew?
Nope.
Okay.
Wait,
so I want
I
to say it one more time.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, when you said alternating like the shape back and, did you mean like back and forth or like each 2 floors and then alternate?
Yeah, I think alternating them is going to create a migraine for you.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't want you to have a migraine. You're going to have plenty of migraines this semester. Don't have it because you like took a hammer and hit your toe with intent. That would not be a good way to get a migraine. Get a migraine from hard work. Don't self-inflict it.
Gotcha.
Cool. Okay. think we're done. Let's move on to Caitlin and let's see, Casey. Casey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm super, and I'm looking for Caitlin. Oh, I don't see her. Where is she? Yes, here she is. Hey, Caitlin, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine. Would you want to go ahead and screen share?
Yeah, we also put our stuff on the Google Drive.
So what do you want me to look at?
I'd probably start with the massing since it makes sense.
3D?
Almost there, yeah.
They're just different angles of the building.
Yep. Okay, so what I immediately think you need to do is I really appreciate these. We could call this the L, right?
Yep.
In the conversations that we were just having, these 3D diagrams are representing the letter L.
Yes.
Correct? Can you give me a thumbs up, Caitlin? I want to make sure you follow. Okay. So and there's a skinny leg in the L, and then there's a fat leg.
Yes.
And
the skinny leg is on Alfred. So I was like offsetting it to account for like the transitional zone.
Yep.
And then also to create kind of like a sense of privacy for residential, since that's where we placed the lobby.
Yep.
Actually, like I started a first floor plan. It's on here somewhere.
It's on the
Google
other
Drive.
plate on
Yeah.
floor plan iterations.
Yeah, so the idea was to put all of the public access stuff on the corner of Alfred and John R, and then on John R, and then anything that had to do with the residential aspect of the building would be on the back end of the
Brilliant.
part of the L.
Yep. It's really sound. It's for a first wash, for a first blush, this is spot on. My only concern is that we're not at the point in this effort where we're looking at what the mass of the upper floors might be. So I want to say this before I forget. The mass of the upper floors does not have to be as fat as the base. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, the ground floor program will probably have elements that spill out from the volume of residential architecture above it. So that from a residential unit looking down into the property, right, you may see some first floor roofs, right? And that's okay. Those roofs could be patios for some of the second floor residential units, right?
Yeah, that might actually work because Caitlin. So I had done the massing, and then Caitlin was working on the floor plans a little bit, and she said she was having some trouble getting like some awkward spaces out of there. So like making the upper floors a little bit smaller might actually.
Oh yeah, now I'm looking at that drawing. So I just opened the plans, and you did exactly what I thought you were going to do, which was. So Caitlin, did you draw those, the plan iterations?
Yeah.
What was that?
So did you draw the plan iterations like level 2, 3, and so on?
Yeah.
So you've got residential programs. Are you looking at my gesture here? You've got residential programs represented by my hands with a lot of like space between them.
Yeah.
What I'm saying to you now is I accept and appreciate the residential program on the property lines or on the streets, right? Along John R. and along Alfred. But that program needs to go, it needs to compress. And I want you to go back to, the first conversation that that sort of, you know, with Andrew and Desmond, where they kind of looked at the unit like you have and say, okay, the unit has this depth, this width, and now I'm going to design the corridor as well. So when you start to think about all of those elements as you're laying this out, you're going to realize that the upstairs program, it has a smaller footprint than the first floor program, for one thing. The second thing is, it seems like, looking at these plans, that the second and third floor have a stairway kind of at the westernmost end. Yes?
Yeah.
But I don't know where it is on the other leg. I assume it's at the southernmost end.
Mm-hmm.
When you make that compression, when you go through this next process, you're going to probably lose that unit at the along the alley. You just need to go. You just need to do that again. How many units have you gotten in this layout? It would help to know that when you're looking at any plan, you guys. If, like, on the level 2 floor plan, you color coded the units, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, and if you told us what their areas were, because you're repeating things, so you know this stuff really, you know, quickly, and if you told us how many units per floor. So I think you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12 or 13 units is usually what you would expect, right? 13 units times 50 divided by 4. Yeah, that's like 12.5 units per floor. So 13 units per floor is what you really want to see. 13 units per floor on 2, 3, and then maybe fewer units on the top floor. You follow what I'm saying, Caitlin?
Yep.
Now, your 4th floor doesn't have as many units. I don't know if you decided not to copy.
No, I was just working around with the.
So this is sort of a
layout.
snapshot in time?
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. Okay, how big are the 1-bedroom units? I'm looking at their plans.
Those ones are, let me double check the exact.
What are you drawing in, by the way?
AutoCAD. They're 22 by 23. For the 1-bedroom.
Yeah, that's a little small, but I don't mind that. That doesn't hurt my feeling. I think one of the reasons why I didn't put the square footage down for, like, as a requirement for you guys is I wanted you to come up with that, because I wanted you to comment on what old farts like me really needed as a living space. But I would say this: let's look at your 1-bedroom, you guys, Casey and Caitlin. Let's look at that 1-bedroom. If I did kind of like a figure ground of that plan, I would quickly learn that the living room is smaller than the bedroom.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's reversed. I think that's like, I don't want to say inappropriate. I just think your attitude has got to be flipped. I think you have to privilege more open space or more floor space, right, for the living room, because the living room is going to hold more people than just Tracy and me, right? It's going to hold guests, and likely not all of those guests are going into the bedroom, right? It's only going to be Tracy and me, right? So the bedroom needs to be smaller. But I know these are prints. Do you have AutoCAD open right now?
Yeah.
Can you snap the depth dimension of that bedroom? Like from the pillows to the walls opposite? The hard wall, not the cabinet wall?
Oh.
The left to right dimension?
Yeah, it is 13 feet
Hmm.
from, yeah, not counting the closet. It's 13 feet.
How big is your bed? Is that a queen?
That's a queen.
And the closet's 2.5 feet deep?
Yeah.
Something doesn't look right. That means that bedroom is 10.5 feet deep from the pillow to the wall or the closet doors. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's no, it's 11 from pillows to the closet.
It just looks a little big, and now I'm thinking that so there's a couple of things that are concerning me about the drawing, and that's why I'm picking on the bedroom. The bedroom looks bigger than the living room, and I think that needs to be reversed. Now I'm learning based on the dimensions you're snapping that the bedroom's dimensions are actually pretty kosher. They're actually not bad. They're actually pretty cozy. I appreciate the way when you open the door into the bedroom, we look at the pillows, right? I appreciate the way the bed unfolds in the room. So the bed's on the correct wall. I appreciate the width of the room. I have no problem with that. I think if the living room were deeper, it could hold more furniture, like maybe 2 side chairs opposite the adjacent to the couch. So maybe these units are a little bit more than the 500 plus square feet. You said they were 23 feet wide?
Yes.
22 times 28. If they were 28 feet wide or 27 feet wide, that might give you a little bit more room.
Okay.
I think you need more closet space too. And I think that's because I'm going to need all of that closet and Tracy doesn't get any, right? And the bathroom, I think the little box next to the tub is a linen closet.
Yeah.
And the tub looks pretty small. The tub doesn't look like you've dropped a block in from the AutoCAD library. So you might want to look at like American Standard or Kohler and use their catalog to drop those elements in, right? Like drop in a Mendota tub, for instance, drop in a Caxton sink, because those are kind of like, you know, the routine choices for Kohler products, just to sort of diagram, just to design with. The toilet looks totally foreign too. I don't know what. Like,
that was one of the AutoCAD ones.
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't look like a toilet from anywhere but Romania. So I might like pick another like a Kohler toilet, right? And I think the door can swing into that room.
Okay, I was just doing it based off of ADA, so that the circle would be the way.
But I think you can have that circle and the door swing.
Oh, okay.
Overlapping. And if there's a way that you can position that door more central into that bathroom, you might be able to get 2 closets on each side of the doorway.
What was that? Sorry.
So if you centered the doorway into the bathroom a little bit more better, you might be able to get 2 closets on each side of the door. A closet where the door into the unit is. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mirror those closets. The kitchen's very large. It could be a lot smaller. Could probably be an L. If it was an L, then you could have like a portable countertop, or like a portable island, or just a small butcher block. I'm not sure where the refrigerator is. My hope is that it's next to the range or the cooktop.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where you're putting the dishwasher. So you're going to want to indicate those things. I think if you do an L-shaped kitchen, it's going to be plenty for you in a small unit like this. Okay. Now, looking at your other layout, like this kitchen layout is better. Still needs all that stuff, but it's better. You must be really small, you guys, because those bar stools are probably like the size of a dinner plate on legs, right? So I don't know how even I could sit on that and not fall off. So maybe do fewer bar stools there. The bedroom, what I like about this plan is the master bedroom is bigger than the other bedroom. I think that works well. But again, I think the living room's too narrow. What's the width of the overall unit in this 2-bedroom?
Let me see. It is 37.5.
Mm-hmm. By 22?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or by 21.
All right. So this is a good start. So what I think in summary, ground floor program does not, generally speaking, extend vertically to create the residential volume up above. What does come from the ground floor program, what does influence the upper floor program, are first floor elevator and stair core elements, trash chute elements. Those things do influence the upper floors. That's why you have to be thinking of them simultaneously. Okay. Go back to your, let me make sure I'm looking at everything here. Yeah, I'm going to go back to so in the ground floor plan near where it says male storage, is that big X in the middle of the floor plan the elevator?
Yeah.
So the shape of that big X box in the upper floor plans has a different orientation and a different size. So you guys need to be drawing these things together, pin down the locations of the cores and the stairs, and make sure that you remember, because you're not drawing it yet. Well, I don't think you're drawing it yet. Just a minute. Yeah. Make sure that you appreciate that that elevator and those stairs also make their way into the basement.
Yeah.
Right? And the basement's kind of telling you, and you've drawn it, the basement's kind of telling you where it's really good to have those core elements. And that's going to fight where they need to be upstairs. The basement's telling you that, like the dead corners, there's 3 or 4 of them. Those are great places for stairs and elevators. So it may be that you actually need to do a core in the middle, like you've got on your ground floor plan, and transpose that over onto the basement plan and let that sort of be something that you start resolving.
Mm-hmm. I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
On the sheet for ground floor and on under that category, it says 50 storage lockers.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't have like a size or anything. Are
Have you
those?
ever lived in an apartment building with those things?
No.
Have you ever seen them? Has anybody?
They're pretty dinky.
Yeah, that's all they
Okay.
need to be.
Okay.
Right?
I didn't know
So
if-
here's what they are. They're chain link fence,
Yeah.
Okay.
right? And if you've ever owned a cat or a dog and maybe you adopted one from the kennel, right? That's what they are. Right? So you might have a kennel with a gate in front on the bottom and then a kennel stacked on top. So you know what I'm saying? So that you have a room of chain link fence posts, gates, and fabric, right? With shelves so my locker might be above your locker.
Okay. So
And I only want 50 spaces.
yeah, I'm trying to think of like how big a kennel would be. Is that like a 3x5 dimension? Is that
Great
too
place to
big?
start.
Okay.
And if it's a 9-foot ceiling in that space, it's 2 4s, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Good instinct. What other questions about program?
Mm,
Oh my God, is that a picture of the Chippendales behind you?
it's my roommate.
My goodness. Good recovery. It's my roommates. Okay, I think we're all set, right?
It is my roommate.
Yeah.
The Suicide Squad one's mine.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but
It's DC Comics.
right, okay. Okay, are we all set, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I think you need to do is make sure you look at the examples from last semester that I shared with you guys, right? They're on the drive from the previous class, and take a look at those unit designs. Look at the dimensions of the units. Look at the dimensions of the rooms. Look how the rooms are laid out. Understand where doors are, how they swing, where they are in the wall. Right? Look, like really take those layouts apart and stand on their shoulders and apply their thinking right to yours. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Thank you. Good start. Okay, let me look here. Stefan and John.
Yep. I think we're next.
Hey, Mark.
How are you?
Not too bad. John, do you want to start off, or should I?
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Let me open up your folder. So options 2, 3, level 1, John Massing, comp design. What do you want me to open?
If you want to open up the John Massing progress.
Great sketch.
Yeah, the first couple pages were some sketches of ideas I was working on. After that, I kind of went into diagrams just to show.
Great sketch, because you went with the J or the nearly pinched C, right? You understood
well,
that.
Kind of an L with the main floor flipped because we wanted to create that courtyard idea, but then like create perforations so that the courtyard has like immediately connected to the public space, which I think is a good.
So I'm looking at the drawing, the 3D drawing that has the handwritten note, taller building to the left, lower building to match existing to the right. And I've seen the colonnade, right, that raises the residential floor as a block on like columns. I think that ground floor space that you're showing as open really needs to be the retail space.
Okay. Because you want the retail space on the corner.
Yeah, because I think I think if you read the program brief and if you look at what the urban design plans are suggesting, that's the optimal space. That doesn't mean that you can't make the John R. or the Alfred facade porous and let you into the courtyard. It's just that maybe it's not a big gaping porous opening, but maybe you end up with kind of like a muse or a corridor that you discover as you're walking along the street, walk into, and then come into that courtyard space. But the courtyard space is pretty neat. But I'm totally in sync with the massing study so far.
So one problem with that massing study, because I like how it was, the general idea was, tall on the left-hand side because we have that tall building next to us, and step it down because we have that other historic building behind us.
Yeah.
So like step down to that height. But if we scroll all the way down to if we scroll to like sheet page like 16, that's when I started to really play around with, like, I took our residential plates and I started to put suites in there, and I was just having the toughest time fitting the 50 suites on the four plates. So
these are great drawings.
I immediately kind of separated myself from stepping it back, and I was still having problems fitting the residential. But I think I kind of figured out why I was having a problem with that. If we scroll up to page 14, I had
that's exactly where I went.
On page 14 is the circulation space. So I've got the two staircases on either end of the L, and then in the middle, those are 12 by 24 staircases, by the way. And I think maybe we can get away with a little bit smaller.
You could probably. I think that if you do 9 foot by 22 foot as a design footprint for those, that's going to work. That basically allows 2 4-foot stairs, right? With hand space between them when they do the scissors thing.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what your wall thickness is going to be, but those stairs we're going to have. Those stairs are going to be, obviously fire rated assemblies. They're going to have handrails, ladies and gentlemen, on both sides, right? Continuous handrails, because it's kind of like a commercial environment in this particular regard. But yes, stair towers at the ends of each leg.
So then in the middle, what I ended up with was first off, I put 2 elevators. We got to get rid of one. I'm just going to put one. Right?
No, you need 2.
We need 2?
You need 2. It's part of your program.
Well, we can't. Is there like an argument to be made there that there's just one?
Well, I think a developer might like that, but like if Nora's moving in with that enormous fish tank and it takes all day to move that in, and you live on the 5th floor, right?
Tough beans. There's only 50 people. It's a community. You gotta
it's out of commission. And here's the other thing. Us old farts are dying every month. So people are moving in and moving out all the time.
Yeah, but it's a community. You got to work together.
I think you should design for 2 elevators. And here's the other thing. Don't separate the elevators. Keep them bundled together. And that's going to be like 7 foot by 16, 7 foot by 18 cell.
That's about what I have. Well, 7 foot. I could go a little bit smaller than, I guess, 7 by 16.
Yeah, pick an elevator from like Tyson Krupp or Otis, right? Pick an elevator that works to the ADA code, and then what you do is, and I was explaining this earlier, in section, one elevator is the sort of standard one, and then the other one is a tall boy, or we say that it has a hi-hat so that I can move a couch in and out.
Okay.
You've never lived in a dorm, have you?
I've lived in an apartment before. We only had one. We had maybe 100 or so units.
Yeah, but you also lived in Windsor, right? Where you all are socialists and you hug and you're all good and kind. And in America, gosh darn it, that's just not the way we operate, right?
2 elevators.
I get a goddamn elevator.
Okay. Okay. So I had a question about the central area there. I also put a stairwell in there. Do we need that stairwell? I thought we did because of lengths. Those two other stairwells are too far apart.
No, they're not too far apart.
Okay, so I could.
There is not going to be the need for 3 stairways because of length or travel distance.
Okay.
There might be the need for 3 stairwells if I go back to your first sketch on plate 1 and I look at that first drawing again in the middle and even the one on the top left, right? And you see how that one volume rises up to meet the tall building to the left, John?
Mm-hmm.
If that's a floor and there are residential units up there, right? And there's a corridor running down the middle, it's, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to need 2 means of egress from that block.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I totally get that, because we gotta, and then even beneath it, the middle step down would have a dead end as well if there's no stairwell.
Dead ends are allowed, and they're allowed to be 50 feet. So, but I need 2 means of egress from each level. This is the rub. Let me share with you guys something that I've got. Probably not supposed to do this, but that's okay. Oh, great. I picked up the right one. Let me screen share this with you.
Okay.
These are buildings by your development. Can you all see that? Can I get a thumbs up? So these are by Lorcan. I want you to look at the mass. Do you know where I'm going on this conversation, John?
Yeah, you had mentioned they did something special with stairs in this project.
Right. So these are the CDs. These are the DD set from the local firm. Site plan. Here's the ground floor. Here's the lower level plan. Here's the ground floor plan. And here's the typical first residential floor, which is level 2. Okay. There's a stair here at the end.
Mm-hmm.
There's a stair here on the side. Here's the common corridor. Right? And there's a stair here on this side. And as I scroll up, you see the gap?
Yeah. Looks like they have a walkway or something.
And there's a courtyard out here. And there's a corridor. There's a tether at the 3rd level. There's a hallway, an exterior hallway with a flat roof on it that connects the north mass to the south mass. That connects. So at this notch right here, there's a connector, right?
On which floor?
On 3.
So did they figure out a distance?
1, 2, 3. What's that?
Did they figure out the distances on the 4th floor?
No, it's not distance again, because these are your building and this building is really small. What I'm saying is that on this floor, right? If I did not have a connector on this floor, I would only have the 1 stair, which is here. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the connector allows 3 means of egress, which are really redundant, right? Until I get to the top residential floor. Remember, the tallest mass is the one up here. Right? So look, it's got 2 stairways as remote as practical, and this mass drops off below. And that's why they did that.
I see.
And they did that in all of their 4 buildings. They have triple stairs, really small buildings, but they had They had to do that because they just didn't have the the egress component solved. Stefan, do you follow that?
Yeah, I do.
Cool.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I appreciate, Stefan and John, about these sketches, those 19 sketches, is you came up with like an original sort of site strategy, volume massing, and then you tried to make it particular in terms of units and the way that they would array.
Mm-hmm.
And then you evidenced all of the stairs and common corridor. So you're thinking, I would say, simultaneously. This is how you have to operate. All right. So I'm going to open up level 1. Is that the one you want me
actually,
to?
if you could open up
option 2, 3.
2 and 3 first.
Gotcha. I'm there.
So with options 2 and 3, first drawing, I believe, is what we did is we took just a generic mass of our site, and we transposed the adjacent properties based off the site model just to see where they would line up with the height that we're allowed to build, just to kind of see if there's anything that we should be kind of. So that was the very first step, and then we started playing around with the massing.
It's great drawing.
And kind of looking at 2 different, well, based on the collective, so we'd have 3 different shapes and 3 different kinds of massing models. So the first one that John did, and then these 2 were kind of just looking at what it would be as another U-shaped form with ranging heights, kind of stepping down towards Alfred.
So to interrupt you, Stefan, I'm looking at plate 2 right now, which shows
number 2 right now.
Right, the 2 iterations. Basically, as Desmond mentioned, it's the J, right? And it just they have different orientations of that J footprint. Okay.
Exactly. It's actually 2 different perspectives looking at the site. One's looking from Alfred.
Oh no, it's the same.
John R.
It's the same iteration, just 2 different views. I'm there.
And it's just giving you a basic massing of the floor plan, the areas that we were kind of looking at for residential units, just to kind of get a ballpark of how much space we. I think for our calculations, we kind of ranged it for. Let me just pull this up 1 second. For the 1 bedrooms, we kind of went from 750 to about 850 square feet, and but this is kind of giving us a little bit area to play for quarter space.
Yeah, they could get smaller, which would help you.
Exactly, and then for the two bedroom, we kind of ranged it from was around 850 to about 1150, just to kind of give us a nominal dimension to work with.
Yep.
To proceed forward. So I think that gave us a.
So what am I looking at on plate 3? What happened to the L? Did it start to contract as it went up?
Exactly. So we reduced it down to well, the U shape contracted into an L shape. So that would change our areas and how we kind of play around with having a small aspect ratio and just kind of opening up the back end for a courtyard.
Yeah.
So in addition of essentially kind of keeping that the building pretty much central off of and John R, and just kind of keeping the back open to uses.
So let me give you some feedback on this, which and I don't know which ones you fancy, but just from a from the perspective, right, of kind of wrapping up and wrapping up some conversations that we started with tonight that I think you all were here for, and extending some of that thread into your work. First of all, I definitely appreciate this package. I appreciate the way that you're thinking of the units, their square footages, and how much meat on the bone, right? You know, how big is this drumstick going to really be? Is it a turkey drumstick, or is it a Cornish hen? Right? You're kind of thinking about the heft and the volume, right, of the building as it relates to the site. So giving some dimensional metrics and dimensional veracity to the program is really important. That means truthfulness, right? So I really appreciate thinking about this in the way that we've been thinking about the Big Boy site in Detroit, in Island View, thinking about the program there. And you know, if you want this much residential, it's going to go way past the ceiling of the allowable building height. This is the conversation that we're having with our client on that. So kind of like thinking about this as an arithmetic problem. I cannot stress enough that these initial efforts in mixed-use buildings is always about arithmetic. And your work, the hard work for you all, is done now, because you know you have 50 units, and that means you have 50 parking spaces, no more, no less. And you have a building height, right, of 5 floors, and you have a set dimension. And the reason that's important for you is because that's different than what happens in an office, for one thing. And I also know that this can work on this site. We're actually designing more units on this site than what you guys are being asked to draw. So I know that this program fits. That's the first thing. The second thing, in the way that, say, you know, Trevor and Alec were looking at the context as a potential sort of influencer on volume and form. You did it, which I think is really interesting. But you're thinking of it in terms of like dimensional compatibility, right? So this is I think this is a very appropriate strategy too. And I think it's a really good like starting point. And maybe maybe it's the way all of you should think about this. If you're ever stuck in how to sort of like start a program like this, or start a design project like this, like listen to what everything around you is saying, right? And the building heights are saying something. Building alignments along the street are saying something to you. So diagram their voice, and that's what you've done. So this is a really useful set of drawings. They're just as good as the hand-drawn drawings. I do not. I want to make something really clear. I want to see those hand-drawn drawings, y'all, in the final Benchmark 1 package. I think those are really, really useful drawings. Don't throw those away. Don't think that they're ugly. They can be part of the way that you unpack the story of how you got to here from there, right? So I think this is a really good package. Let me open up level 1. So this is a real simple footprint of the ground floor. Is the retail the red piece?
Yeah, the retail is going to be the red piece, and that's facing onto John R. Like right now, it's just to kind of lay out the grade to know the dimensions that we're working with.
Yep.
So it's a 30 by 30 for the time being, and that's going to change based on what kind of structural system we choose. But just to kind of give us building blocks of.
Yep.
Okay,
draw what you think.
We'll have problems if we kind of.
So what I'd like to see is that retail move up to column A.
Okay.
And that will allow you more green, right? Which I guess is BOH, right? Back of house stuff, stairs, trash rooms, generator. Maybe the generator is in the basement, but all of that stuff that, lobby, common corridor, exercise room, whatever constitutes the ground floor program. There's a lot of it, you guys, that's going to want to sag to the alley. The alley, you may say, oh, the alley's just a piece of crap. It's not. It's really how I just get in and out of the parking deck. No, the alley is a portal from the public realm to back of house aspects of this building. So in actual fact, there's a lot of attention that you need to give to the alley and anything along column line F, for example, right? So here's what those things are. There's the back of house programs that have to be ranked. Like trash is heavy, it's stinky, it's wet, and it's big, right? And it has variety because it has like recyclables, it has trash, and it has equipment, right? So it wants to be as close to the alley as possible, because the guys and gals that collect it don't want to have to pull it a great distance from the trash room to the alley. They just want to like stop right there and grab it and go. Follow? But maybe the electrical room, which needs to have incoming service from the public way, the alley, is back behind it, for example. Doesn't need to be on the alley. So it can have like a second tier ranking in terms of like position. The ground floor parking that you can't fit down below, right? That wants to come in off the alley, right?
Do we have to have, sorry,
say
Mark,
again?
do we have to have parking on grade? Or could
No,
we?
but I just predict that you ain't going to get it all downstairs.
No, right? Okay.
You might. I think that, and you won't be surprised, John, to hear this, that my only Canadian last semester got all of her parking down below. That's because you all are brilliant. And she went to Ryerson, right? And so if you have parking on the ground floor, it's got to come off the alley. So that means there's a throat, right? A driveway that comes in off the alley, and there's parking spaces there. That's at least 20 and 20. That's at least a 40-foot throat. So you start to like chunk away, eat away at the length of the alley of that property line. You've got back of house stuff, probably got a stairway down there. You got a trash room. You got maybe other back of house stuff that needs to be there. Maybe you got 40 feet for parking in a drive aisle. Oh, and then you got like 24 feet for the speed ramp that goes to the lower level, which is probably along column line 1 to 2, right? So suddenly that length between 1 and 6 along the alley, along your column, it says 12. It probably should be like F.5 or G. But suddenly, like all of that frontage is gone, right? So I think if you all start to like lay out the grid on the site plan and start to do an overlay and think about the programs that have to sag, right, to the bottom of the property vis-a-vis the alley, and then move other programs close to it that maybe don't have to be right on the alley, that's a good way to start, which is another reason why I think the retail needs to move up.
Hey, Dan, what are our setbacks along, if you're still on level 1 slide, along column line 12 and then
0.
column line right on the line, and then say 1?
Yeah, 0 property line.
And then 6 and A are both 10 feet, right, for the main floor?
Yes.
Okay.
However, and I said this the other night, I want to make sure I repeat it. However, the basement can go to column line 6 and column line A. So the basement is possibly bigger than every floor above it.
Okay.
Are you all following that? And that'll help you have a little bit more room to play with your cars down below.
It might make it tricky with the columns too.
Hmm.
If the columns now.
But a Canadian can solve it. It's in the drive. You can see her work. She solves it.
Okay.
And she did all that work by them. So you're, this is going to really bum you all out, but like all of the projects last semester, they all worked independent. They all worked individually in groups of 1. So that's why the stakes are a little bit higher for you guys this semester, because, you know, you're working in groups.
Hey,
good questions.
Dan, I just want to, I know you've already told us now a number of occasions retail's got to be on the corner.
Yeah.
The brief says corner as well. My idea behind it, I'm just going to say this one time, and then if you say no again, that's the end of it. The idea behind bringing the retail, like flipping the main floor, was to, if you can open up sheet 12 on that first set that we had. that we were looking at?
Yeah, I'm there.
So on 12, that's kind of the view through the courtyard. So I thought if you're walking along the public space, you would see all the retail along the backside of the courtyard, and then that would be like this invitation into the courtyard, and then extend the public space out underneath.
What is the program of Orange in plate 12?
Orange is a mix between retail and then all our like tertiary spaces that are like all
But
our
it's
mechanical.
but it's not open. There's architecture on both Alfred and John R. in this drawing. There's no penetration. I can't see through from the corner to the courtyard. Or am I misunderstanding the diagram?
On page 12?
I'm looking at 13 right now, I guess. What view is 13?
So 13 is an aerial view from the alleyway, looking
From the
down.
alley. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And then if you go to page 12, that's a view from Alfred.
Yeah.
And then to the left would be John R. And then there's the sort of the see-through box would be like your lobby, elevator.
Yeah, I'm looking at 12 now. Right.
So the see-through box is kind of just your elevator, concierge, lobby, mailroom.
Yep.
And then there's those perforations underneath the residential. Green is residential.
So what I want you to do, I think you know my position, so I'm not going to tell you no.
Okay.
What I am going to say to you all is that once you start to configure the ground floor program that's stated in the brief, that courtyard's going to get pretty intimate, translate small.
Okay.
And that program is just going to go, it's going to like suck up all of that ground floor space. The ground floor program is huge.
Okay.
Now, some of that program can go in the basement, like under the ramp, along some of the outside walls, and in the core. It's kind of a balancing act.
Okay. I haven't gotten that far into really.
I know that. That's why I'm telling you that I'm going to let you determine that no is actually doing you a favor.
Okay. All right. Okay.
However, having said all of that, I love these drawings, and I love that you're thinking about the possibility that program should be challenged, that program like retail and the core elements can be interpreted as a transparent thing, and that structure can have kind of an expression aspect or virtue, right? In the earliest drawings, the earliest iterations, I really embrace that. So I want to be clear to you. I want you to hear that enthusiasm from me. So I'm not shutting it down for like ridiculous reasons. I just want you to I want you to remember what I said earlier, right in, pardon me, my voice is gone, in Desmond's and Andrew's conversation tonight, that you gotta like solve the layout now. Like this weekend, you all have to solve the layout this weekend. Because it's going to take some time to pull that layout together so that on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, right, you can show it and we can tweak it, right? And then when I look at the calendar, when's the review again? The 20th and the 22nd? Is that correct? Yeah. So you're going to need the week of the 12th to fine tune it and pull some drawings together. So you're right on schedule, but that's why you have to do this exercise really quickly.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so it's 7:36. We're back on time. Stefan and John, do you have any other questions? Did we look at everything you wanted me to see?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we covered everything.
I'm looking. Oh, you actually did a Excel sheet of the program.
Yeah, there's some number crunching that we did.
That was kind of our step one, I thought.
Yeah,
was
that's what I do.
To put all the areas together and then just get the areas on the site just to see what it looked like. And then we started.
So did you do that drawing?
Sorry?
Did you do a drawing of that first floor?
Yeah.
Where's that?
On the big DWG PDF. Starting from, I guess, just starting from slide or sheet 4, and then just scrolling through, we kind of like built it up. So the first was the site. Then we took the area of the garage for the 50 spots, which we thought was like 20,000 square feet. And then just to visualize like, oh, we're taking up the whole site. And then the next sheet.
Wait, so which plate are you talking about?
That was plate 5, kind of starting at plate 5.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to like visualize what that would look like on the site that we were given. And then scrolling from there, we're just building up those areas, just simply stacking them just to see what it looks like.
So I'm looking at 6, for example, and I think that laundry and exercise could go on other floors.
Right. I was yeah. You know, that
I think they could go,
the thought crossed my mind, Mark. Like, what if we were to say that every suite got a washer dryer too?
Yeah, is it possible to do stackables?
Yeah, you can do them. It's just, there's a whole bunch of other decisions. For example, and this class and the session that we have together, the semester that we have together, doesn't really afford us the time to do it. But gas or not gas, right? As a utility service to the building. So in buildings like this, you're probably going to always do electric and no gas. You're always going to have electric appliances, electric ovens and cooktops. You're going to have electric water heaters, and you're going to have because it's just so expensive and so cumbersome to bring all those big yellow gas lines into a building with all those meters, because you have to have a wall, right? So this is the very first conversation that we have with our mechanical and electrical plumbing engineer and our developer.
Do you want to run water to each individual, or just one single laundry room type of thing, or a laundry room?
So I tried to make it easy for you this semester, and I thought that if we did a program that biased away from unitized washers and dryers within the units themselves to allow you to create a laundry room for the building, or laundry rooms for the building. Maybe there's one on level 2, maybe there's one on level 4 kind of thing, or you know what I mean, 2 and 3. And some people have to walk up and down, and some people have it on their floor. It allowed you to maybe think of the laundry room not as the laundry room that you think but maybe it could be a laundry room that's both a place where you'd watch the Super Bowl with your buds, because there's like a kitchen in it. It's also part business center. Maybe it's also like part exercise room. You know what I mean? So that it's a place that's more than just a laundry room, but it's a place where you can do other things. So it was a program default that allowed me to like put it back on your shoulders to maybe comment on what a laundry room could be. So I just gave you a big clue.
Yeah. Okay. I never thought of that.
But if you extract it though on plate 6 from the first floor, it frees up some of the other program. But I'm telling you what, that even if I extract that orange box that says laundry, exercise, etc., that's not the first floor program. That's not what's left, because you're going to have the ramp, you're going to have parking, you're going to have all that back of house stuff that I was just talking about a moment ago. You're going to have stairs. You're going to have that core, right? You're going to have the stairs.
Mark, how big of a mechanical shaft should we have? Like with a 4x4 or a 6x6?
So what is the shaft holding?
Ductwork
For?
plumbing for the suites.
So what I like to suggest.
Oh, wait a minute. Each suite has its own.
Yeah. So what I like to suggest is that supplies and vents for these units come through the corridor walls. And that where that stuff is occurring, maybe that wall has to get a little fatter. So imagine a mechanical room, right? For each unit is, or the bathroom, the powder room for that unit is on the common corridor, the common hall wall, right? That wall can get a little thicker to hold all that stuff.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. I ended up defaulting to like a huge mechanical shaft as if it was like a single, like a HVAC system.
So you will have, like, if you do the L or if you do the C or the J, where there's a big knuckle, right? You're probably going to have some stuff running up that shaft. So one of the things that you can do, you guys, is bundle shaft work along the elevator wall or a stair wall. That's another possibility. So let it run up and down at those like end and remote things, and then they run into the building at the ceiling of each corridor from there.
Okay.
You know, if you look on the M drive in the Brush Park Mark Farlow folder in the research module, I gave you everything you need to know about mixed use buildings as it relates to M, E, and P.
Okay.
It's developed by our our mechanical engineers called SES, Strategic Energy Solutions. It's the guide to mixed use buildings. I think you ought to look at that.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I just have one more question.
Go ahead, John.
On the third sheet, there's a quick sketch I did thinking about Corbusier's Unité de Habitation.
Yeah.
And there's a section I found of that thing where he was stacking his apartments so that he could get rid of the corridor space. And I was wondering, because it just seems like such a brilliant idea.
It is.
I wanted to maybe borrow that idea.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
Go back to options 2 and 3. That folder.
Yep.
And look at your maximum height and look at that dimension and divide it by 5 floors.
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out if you can get 50 units into an L or a J or a C.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It may be tough. It's a brilliant idea. And by the way, since you're in Windsor, you can drive over if we let you in, and you can see City Modern Detroit, and they're building the carriage houses right now, John, that have that interlocking geometry.
Really?
Yeah, they're only 2 and 3 stories, but they're raw enough that you can see them sectionally, and you can see them. They're finished enough so that you can see them sculpturally, if that makes any sense, because they're progressing gradually. And they're by Beth Whitaker, so they're on her website, and you can see, Merge Architects, so you can see them as a drawn thing. Now, if you do a C, right? I'm always talking, when I'm talking like this, I'm talking about the res floors. Or if you do a donut or an O, right? That allows you to get a lot of res program on one floor plate. In an L or a J or a C, you probably are going to be looking at 12 or 13, maybe 14 units per floor, right? But if you do a donut, you might get like 18 units, 19, 20 units per floor. So you may be able on the topmost floor to do something sort of sectionally sexy like the Unité. Maybe not the interlocking thing, but maybe sort of one half of it, like a 2-story unit that has a mezzanine in it that feeds both the street and the roof, right? Maybe it has its own terrace. So you could interpret that a little bit.
Okay.
So that's something to think about.
Okay.
I'm going to move on, okay?
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hung, Nora, and Fajr, you have the floor. Nora, we've been picking on you tonight and your big aquarium.
It's a saltwater tank.
Yeah, I know what it is because those are pretty exotic looking fishes in there. So should I open up module 2 or yeah, probably, right?
Yes.
12 plates. I'm open. You need to correct your spelling on all of your documents this semester, okay? Nora.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because terracotta is C-O-T-T-A, not Kada, like John Cicada, right?
Oh. We make the same mistake.
Yeah, you did probably. So I'm looking at plate 1.
Oh, God.
Oh, great drawings.
By who?
Well, I don't know who did them. I just like the sidewalk sketch. That's cool.
Oh.
Is that on slide 2?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on slide 2. Okay. So do you just want us to talk about it?
Yeah. Tell me what I'm looking at.
Okay. Well, so the second slide is looking at our site from Mark Avenue or Boulevard. And what I liked about that specific location was how the street and the buildings frame our site really well. So it is an opportunity to have our building either blend in if we want or really stand out. And there's huge potential from that. And that's something that intrigued me. So I just looked at 2 basic materials that we can use for the facade. So for example, dark precast concrete so that if we really want it to stand out, or terracotta, which would kind of blend in with the color scheme of Brush Park.
I might suggest, if I may, so I really appreciate that. You're trying to extract a palette from the context. That's a great way to work. We've heard a number of team members today express that sensitivity, that sentiment in different ways. Thinking of it materially is a terrific way. What I'd like to prod you with now is that terracotta is one interpretation as a material of maybe that color, that saturation. It could be Oko skin. It could be brick. It could be hardy plank, right? It could be wood siding, for example. Yep. Not that you know what I'm saying. I think let's extract the temperature and the color and the texture from the context, not necessarily deliberate or make a determination about the material itself. So, for example, the dark precast concrete, that's terrific, but it could also be like seen as gunmetal for like handrails and window mullions, right? And window frames. So it could be aluminum, but it could also be like the metal panel, right? That could be the color of metal panel on the building. So again, don't think of it necessarily as the material for the building, but think of it as the color and texture that your buildings could have.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, cool. This was not saying terracotta or precast concrete. They were just saying, hey, there's this material which is different from brick, but it has the same color scheme.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's concrete, which we'll all know, but however it can be used in a different way, which will be attracting attention in comparison to the other buildings around it.
I know I sound probably really contradictory to you guys, because at one moment I'm saying things like, you need to make the decision now, you need to focus, you need to make things simple, so you gotta throw things out, right? I know at one moment I'm saying that all night long. And then I say something like this, where I say, it could be terracotta, it could be Oko skin, it could be wood, it could, I talk about expanding, right? So I know I sound, and I'm not apologetic about that, because design is this process, right, where you go through consolidation and reduction, and you go through expansion as well. Cooking is the same way. Okay, I'm on plate 3.
Okay, I did further study on the materials, and I kind of found this, they had and I'm sorry about the misspelling, I went into this website and I found the terracotta, and they actually show how they apply it, and you can kind of see how they use the metal stud, and then they do the fabrication of that panel. It's a panel, and they have different shapes. You can kind of see. And this is kind of going to go back to a 3D model that I kind of created on some of how I kind of wanted to use that, and how I wanted to incorporate some steel rods or columns to kind of create and you'll see right now what I'm talking about. So okay. I kind of saw some of these where they have different type of panels, like concrete panels on the bottom, where you see it was for a facade panel. And it's showing the, kind of a different texture, a different feel, and kind of what you were talking about, and going back into using, instead of creating this potato chip, like you said, and kind of using that into the materials, and you can still have a U shape, an L shape, and still have something aesthetically nice.
That's right. And so if you think about it, you can have a simple, I mean, it's really amazing, right? You can take like the human body. He can be skinny, he can be chunky and heavy, or perfectly built, and you could do completely different sort of garments and outfits on them, and they can all look good, or they could all look miserable, right, and disheveled and not put together. So depending on how you approach the strategy for enclosure, you can be very sensitive enough to sort of make the most out of the situation, right? So thinking about the skin as a wrapping is a very interesting strategy. The terracotta must be understood as more than just a visual thing. It must be understood as a rain screen. In other words, you need to appreciate and that rain screen can play out not only as terracotta, it could be Oko skin, it could be fiber reinforced concrete panels, it could be Trespa, Trespa, which is like plastic laminate, right?
Okay.
It's a product that is mechanically fastened, right, to a cleat system, just like your section drawing in the upper right here. And all of those products permit weather to drive through the skin, not through the material itself, but through the gaps between the joints. Right? So you might have a panel here, and you might have a panel here. I'll pull
through the reveals.
And it drives through, and what it does is it hits the drainage plane, right? And then that drainage plane collects all of that water. It falls by virtue of gravity, right? When things intersect it, even those things have weep holes drilled into them so that they permit that kind of drainage. And then they weep out at the bottom. It also means that the surface that's getting direct rain and wind and snow penetrating on the skin dries on all sides of it, right? So the rain screen system permits the product to dry out completely when precipitation has stopped. And that promotes a longer life for the material itself, right? You've probably seen, particularly where you live, Nora, wood trim around windows on houses and wood siding that comes up to the windows, and you see dry rot. It's because the water just can't evacuate out, so it stays within the volume of the wall section, the enclosure, and it has nowhere to go, so it just continues to sort of deteriorate the substance of the wood. So the rain screen is promoting equilibrium of air pressure. It's promoting complete drying of the wall enclosure, and it also allows for replacement parts, right? If a rock flies against like in a hurricane, right? If a rock flies against one of those terracotta panels and it damages it, it can come off. It just like lifts off that cleat, and then they can replace it with another panel, right? So there's certain advantages to it, but it also means that the wall's getting fatter, and that gets more expensive. And terracotta is, I don't know if you'll know what I mean by this, but the terracotta panel is like the 7 Series BMW, right, of building materials.
Really?
Okay.
Right? Does that translate?
Yep.
Right? So, but Oco skin is maybe like the Buick.
Okay.
Right? Hardy plank is like the Kia.
Okay.
All right. So you know it's all good and well, right, to look at these materials, but I also as we continue to explore them, there's certain sort of associations that your critics and your faculty will have when you offer up something like a 7 Series BMW.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean don't do it. I want to be really clear. It means maybe that you do it where it matters, right? Where people can maybe walk by it or touch it or stand at the corner and look up at it. And maybe it's not everywhere. We don't put lipstick all over the face. It just goes here, right? And it gets a lot of mileage in its limitations. So there are ways, right, that we could be crafty and clever in using good materials in some places, and maybe lesser valued materials in other places. And this goes back, right, to that conversation that we had on Tuesday night, thinking about the building as like a report card, and you grade different sort of conditions, corners, faces, depending on where they are. And that's maybe where, right, where you think about the nicer materials.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm looking at the sketchbook sketches.
That's just my sketchbook. That was like very early on. I think right after you told us just get into thinking about things, I was just thinking of the way I could arrange the building, the interiors, asking questions, looking at the surfaces, and also like looking at the wind.
Yep.
I patterns.
So I love this plate 4. I hope tonight's conversation, Fajer, Hung, and Nora, in terms of like thinking of the alley as a really important condition in how you think about first floor program, it has sunk in. I hope you heard that and it means something to you.
Yep.
Cool. Should I go to 5?
Yeah, let's go to 5. So here I was just looking at the sun patterns because I noticed from being outside and from I think Cody's SketchUp model that the sun does not necessarily hit much of the side on Alfred and not entirely the side on the alley. So I was thinking of how I could maybe provide those sides with more sunlight, natural
Well, wait,
sunlight.
the alley faces south, so the alley will probably get the most light, except for the building next door. Is that what you meant?
Well, it
Is
has a huge building next door.
Yeah,
so I
so
was
it's the
imagining
tall building next door that's eclipsing direct sunlight there. correct?
exactly.
Okay.
So early on, it doesn't receive sunlight because of the building next to it, and then afterwards,
Yeah.
it
I
will
follow.
not receive. Yeah. So I was thinking, how could I temper or chamfer those sides so that they could still receive some natural sunlight? And I was also thinking of the opposite side of the building, so on John Art, because there's going to be such a huge shadow cast on that side and probably affecting the building across from us. I was thinking of how our building could offer up a path for the light to travel all the way through.
I appreciate that. Now, I appreciate that you're thinking of all those things. However, you also have to hit the program, right?
Yeah.
So there is going to be a 5-story building here, right?
Yeah.
And by virtue of that fact, there's going to be shadows, but those shadows are moving. They're dynamic. And if you remember what it's like to look outside on a day like today, Fajr, there are like several days where we don't even have shadows. So I want you all like to, I love that you're thinking of all these things simultaneously and imbuing these things with like relatively important degrees of concern. This is all really important, but when you do that, make sure that you say, I'm really interested in the shadow, and I'm really interested in what that means for our neighbors and how that impacts things. That's really good. But then you have to say, but is that important? Is that really the most important thing? And is that the core project? Is that the most important element or core aspect of the project that is going to drive this semester? So I want you to always interrogate yourselves in that way.
Yeah, of course.
I love the first floor plan.
Because it's an L?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that lobby, I could like play a soccer game in. That lobby's really, really big. There's going to be a lot of other back of house stuff. The lobby actually is probably really, really small, ladies and gentlemen. But the basic zoning, right, is spot on, right? The speed ramp at the bottom of that drawing, a few parking spaces slipped in the middle, could be fewer. That might privilege more back of house stuff. The retail on the hard corner, amenities and utilities off the alley. That's the diagram, Stefan, for the first floor. That's the diagram for the first floor. I was picking on your colleague there just a moment ago. I think the option 2 diagram could work. I saw that work last semester too, where you have a kind of a penetration, a slot or a plow that cuts through the retail, right? So that could work if you're able to get all that program on the first floor. Some of that program can go in the basement. So that's another thing. But anytime you add program to the basement, it may be at the expense of hitting the parking. So you have to find that sort of equilibrium as you're doing this. Okay?
Yeah, I noticed like the corners in the parking, underground parking usually will seem to serve well for those kind of things because they cannot be used for parking anyways.
Right. But they don't always work well for residential units up above.
True. That's the thing, it has to align.
Again, it has to. Okay, now I'm on 7.
7. So that was just me trying to see what that crazy provocative idea would look like in 3D.
Cool.
And yeah, I was just think Huang showed us a project about staggered units, which have side windows kind of protruding from the side of the wall. So the facade was not flush.
Yeah.
We had units kind of pushing out.
Yeah, I see that.
And I like that because it could serve as that kind of chamfered corner without really having to be cut in that manner.
And the massing strategy here, which is, you know, option 1, option 2 is kind of the same thing, right? It's, I mean, option 2 is unitized, right? They're kind of hinged. Option 1, they're disconnected. The combination is kind of a marriage of them.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that kind of is the 3-dimensional iteration of plate 6, first level option 2. It's sort of taking that courtyard off of John R. and bringing it all the way into the residential realm. It looks.
Yeah.
I want to suggest that the option on plate 7 that shows the combination is probably one to think about because it allows for the minimal number of stairs. The problem, though, I see you needing to solve is where the elevators are. And if the lobby comes in off of the northwest corner, we have to go in a few feet to get to the red mass, right? And like almost halfway towards the alley. So that elevator is probably going to happen on the leg that unites both wings. And that elevator is going to have to be somewhere.
Oh, you're right.
Right? So the elevators and stairs don't have to be together. You could walk into a lobby, you guys, and not have a stairway there, right? Stairways are usually like at other ends. But the lobby will need to have the elevator. So when you think about that first floor plan, I think that's going to be important.
Well, the lobby does have both elevators there. It just what I noticed until you get to the second floor, only one side has elevators.
Yeah, on your work, yeah.
Yeah, on my work.
Yeah.
Also, I was wondering, do both elevators have to go all the way down to the underground?
No.
Okay.
One does.
Okay.
Here's another thing.
And we should.
Go ahead, Nora.
Should that be the one leading to the main corridor? Of course, right? So.
The elevators should bundle together. You should not separate them.
Oh, okay.
They should be together. Only one elevator needs to serve the lower level. I might suggest that it's the hi-hat elevator, right? Mm-hmm. Because you might be dragging a bicycle or your snow skis, right? You know what I mean? Down to the lower, to your storage locker, right? So that might be the one that goes down there. The other one does not have to. Now, some of you, and we talked about this earlier with Stefan and John, when I showed you the LOHA work where they had the 3 stairways, right? The lower level will only need 2 stairways because of the occupant load that I predict down there. So if you have 3 stairways, they don't all have to go to the lower level. Only 2 do.
Oh.
So those are strategies that you can, implement. This diagram, module 2, preliminary design concept, plate 8, that's kind of that. This is kind of a summary of it, right?
Yeah, so the retail.
Yeah.
It facing John R. and part of it to Alfred.
Yeah.
We need to reach to the second floor to create like a 2-level connecting thing.
Is it just a 2-level retail space hung, or what's happening? What's happening in that retail space and why does it have that like slot? This is really interesting because I might have put that on the corner, for example.
The idea was that the slot reach all the way to the courtyard,
Ah.
The front, you don't reach to the end.
I can't see it in this view, but like if you had other views that orbited around, I might know that.
Right.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
So that was the idea. And then the 2-bedroom apartment will be deployed, scattering all around the building.
Yeah, let me stay on the. Let me not jump into the units yet.
Okay.
So I'm looking at plate 8. I'm looking at plate 7. They're kind of the same, like, vision, right?
Yeah.
It looks like in plate 7, the thicker leg that has the faceted incremental units is on the alley.
What option
It is.
On the
He's talking about mine.
Yeah, the so titled combination plate on 7. It looks like the chunkier, fatter leg is facing the alley, facing south. And in your diagram hung on 8, it looks like the northern leg is. In your diagram, that fatter leg is probably a double loaded corridor. And in contrast to the alley leg, the thinner leg, it looks like it might be a single loaded corridor. So what I want to say is the blending of single and double loaded corridors is a really intriguing thing because it allows the corridor on the single loaded leg to engage the courtyard. That's cool. Right?
You talking about mine or
on yours? Yeah. But yeah, it's on both of them, right? But I want to make sure that you hit the units, right? I want to make sure that you achieve, right, the baseline unit count of 50. You have to hit 50. So one thing I'd like you guys to all do is as you're thinking about like these pancakes of floors relative to their program, think about the size of the unit and the variations that you have. You have 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom and how big they are, right? Because they're like this or like this, yes? And then array them and find out, like in this diagram, how many units you can get in a floor. And that will tell you, right, if you need double loaded corridors to hit the numbers, or can you do both double and single? The reason I say it this way is because single loaded corridors, while they have their benefit, right, the corridor can look, the hallway can look into the courtyard, and it has that kind of connectivity, and you can see people circulating, you know, at the end of the day or in the morning, all cool stuff. But they're like wildly inefficient, right? In terms of like, you know, have a corridor and units. I could have a corridor and units, but I could also have twice as many units on the other side of that single loaded corridor. So you have to always be thinking about the program as a generator of form. Okay, let's go to the units.
What slide are you on?
Oh, wow. So I'm looking at 9. So you look like you've taken the Stanley Sadowitz idea where you have a in carpentry, right? I think
so this module I pull out from my ID5 design.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it looks like there's 2 units.
Right. They
with
share
with a biscuit in between them, which is what we call it in carpentry. It's like it allows 2 things to fuse together and be one thing. And so that biscuit is the bath and the storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty damn nifty. And that footprint starts to work with the faceted, staggered
right
element that Bodger had on plate 7.
So with this one, you can increase or decrease the space that you need based on the one bedroom.
Oh, yeah, that's actually so you meaning the dash lines can grow or contract according to program.
Mhm.
So thinking about, like we were talking about earlier, thinking about the brick and thinking about all the different ways the brick can go, like stack bond, running bond, a soldier course, roll lock course, all of that stuff. Thinking about the variations on one consistent theme. Love that. I love that idea. Thinking about reducing the pesky, difficult program elements to their essential minimums according to ADA and that sort of thing, bundling them together
Right.
and letting them be the joint that articulates, right, like a kneecap between the
But
units.
You can save space for HVAC and water because two units share the same.
Yeah, and the other benefit, of course, right, is that like the noises from the living room don't migrate through to the living room of the other unit because there's kind of like this natural sort of sound barrier there, right?
Yeah, I mean
that's cool.
When the other two, I mean, there's still going to be one living room that facing the other living room.
Yeah, but there's that biscuit between them.
Like a buffer.
Yeah. So for me, if you guys can create the ideal buffer or biscuit and the create some really interesting unit types as a result of this plate 9 diagram, I think that would be the way to go. I'm looking at 10. It looks like, did someone else create 10?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was kind of going a little bit to the design that I have that will show the building that I created.
Yep.
So I did a 1-bedroom and I did a 2-bedroom. It's about, I'm sorry?
These are large.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's about, the 1-bedroom is about 450 and the 2-bedroom is 650 square feet.
Uh-huh.
So.
But the 1-bedroom looks larger than the 2.
Maybe at the angle that it is. I don't.
Did you draw these in CAD?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the scale. I think it's out of scale. Yeah, that too.
Yeah, because the font, the text is different between one and the other, and the stoves are different. Yeah, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, Nora, you guys, on a drawing. You don't want to change the scale. You want to make sure that you always don't shrink an element of the drawing to fit the plate that it's on, the sheet that it's on. Make sure that everything is apples to apples, identical in scale. Always try to show things at the same orientation.
Okay.
What are we looking at on 11 and 12?
I created a site plan. That's kind of seeing the overview of the site plan that I had with the building. I created a U-shape building, and the green is kind of greenbelt areas on top of the very on the roof of the building. Yeah, and then that kind of glass-looking area, I created a intersection catwalk from one greenbelt or one area of landscape to the other.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the next one, I kind of provided some views of what the building would look, showing some of the material that I provided on those images as far as using those prefabricated panels and all that stuff. I also have a video on, if you go back to the folder, showing some scenes, how that area looks. And now that we've been talking about, I did base most of my retail on the alley. So if anything, it would be rotated to face John R. and Alfred.
Right.
And if you see kind of on the very first part of the scene, I don't know if we can pause it, right? That perspective view where it shows the alley and corner of John R. I created an opening in the middle or corner, and it kind of connects to the courtyard. So, I mean, basically, I kind of went a little bit more in depth as far as materials, and I didn't keep entirely that U shape. I kind of went, did a little bit of negative and positive to kind of show a different, I guess, view of it.
Sure. So I think what you guys need to do is decide, because so the three of you have been working and creating kind of your own race car or your own race horse. Each of you have your own race horse now, right? And you're sort of I think that's fine. And you've let them run, and now you're probably, I think, maybe asking me or hoping that I'll pick one of the horses, and you hope that it's yours, and it will be the one that you work with for the rest of the semester. What I think, but I don't want to do that. So there's not going to be a horse that wins this race tonight. But what I want you to do though now is to work together to sort of like let all of this conversation tonight, not just with you three, but with everybody else that we talked to tonight, right? And everyone I talked to on Tuesday night, let all of this conversation, and this is not just a conversation directed at you three, but like take stock of all of the advice, take stock of all of the research, take stock of the site more carefully, listen to the recommendation that you're hearing from me that there's just certain things that you should be flexing your muscles on and innovating on. The ground floor is probably not one of them. And thinking about the program as a generator of form and then letting the context influence the form in that order. And meaning not only like the urban context, but also the climate context, the sun and the wind context, because that's context too, right? And letting all of that stuff kind of like cause you to say, you know, really at the end of it all, the building should be a donut, a C, or a J, or an L, or a bar, if I can get all of that program into it. And reduce it to those things. Now, that doesn't mean that the J or the L or the bar, right, can't rotate. You know, there's variations on the rotation. It could go this way, right? It could go this way. It could go this way. There's variations that it can take. But I want to suggest that the variations that you work toward work for the site, and they work for the program in terms of egress, that it works for the program in terms of ground floor, and think of it logically. There is a logical solution. There's probably a dozen good logical solutions that exist on this small site. I know you'll come up with it, but don't think, please don't think, you guys, that you have a whole semester to explore those 12 solutions. You really have to come to a conclusion this weekend. That's really how fast the semester has to go for you. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Is that overwhelming?
Yeah.
Have you ever had to
It
design
should
that
be.
quickly before, Hung?
No, it's like a whole semester assignment.
Yeah, it is, because you know you will have to, like, as I said on Tuesday, you have to do so much other stuff to, you know, solve the problem of the assignment. So let's use this weekend as an opportunity to work together, right? Which is like the second, third, fourth, and fifth. Let this weekend be that time where you work as a team in a charrette mode, right? A charrette mode, where you birth the final iteration and then develop it in simple diagrams so that we can review them on the 6th and the 8th of next week, and I can give you some feedback, right? And on the 6th and the 8th of next week, you really want to have as much stuff as you can have, like floor plans of all the different levels, right? You're going to want to have massing diagrams. You can cut elevations if you're drawing in Revit, or you can cut elevations if you're drawing in SketchUp, just to show us what you're thinking. And because you're going to need the week of the 13th and the 15th with us to fine tune those iterations and draw the final package, because we're presenting on the 20th and the 22nd, right? That's the calendar that you have. That's how fast you have to work. So the baby that you birth for the 20th and the 22nd may not be fully developed. It may not have, all its teeth, may not have all its hair, right? But it's going to have a lot of essence to it. And the goal is to have as much essence as possible.
Is the presentation on the 20th or the 22nd?
20th and the 22nd. 2 nights. Yes?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to call Dan in. Are you guys ready? You have any other general questions? We're right on schedule for them. Any questions, Nora?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Roger? Anyone else? Stefan, you're leaning in. Do you have a question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. That was excellent. I really enjoyed tonight. That was a good effort to pull all that together, and the conversations get better, you guys. In case you haven't heard Sir Philip of Plowright ever say this, the conversations get better if you have more material to share. So the goal is always not to ask me what you think I should have, but to provide us as much as you possibly can. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Great. We just finished up desk crits for 4 of the teams, and so we visited with all 7 teams this week. We'll do the same for the next 2 weeks, and then we have the pinups on the 20th and the 22nd, I think it is. So I think we're in fairly we're on schedule, which is good.
So I had a question for you and Stefan. How is the issue of the sort of the construction type building code height area limits coming?
So we haven't gotten into that completely yet. They're still sort of putting the building together as a mass, sitting in on the site. That is definitely an issue, and I look to talk about that more carefully next week, to be honest.
Okay, I've just come across a couple of articles online. I will send them to you.
Terrific.
And maybe that might help a little bit. So, so at this point, maybe I could go through the references to the textbook on sustainable building construction and talk a little bit about some of the climatic responsiveness issues that are part of the next assignment. And I can kind of run through the DVD that the book has and maybe show you some of the key sections of that students need to make reference to. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
So I need to do the screen share. So is that the green?
That is on the left side.
Okay.
And it's not coming up. Yes, it's the green TV with the white arrow in it. Click on that and then click on the program or file that's open. So you make a choice, and
trying to do that. Let me see if anything is showing up. Let me do that one more time. Hold on. So you say just click on this
and then hit like accept or whatever.
Okay.
At the bottom of the dialog box there.
I understand. All right, one moment. Let's see if I can get to it.
There we go.
Okay, so what are you seeing right now?
Well, some of your desktop and then some of the program. It's kind of moving around a little bit. You want to
can you
move
see
me out of the way and then privilege or yeah, there we go.
Can you see that screen in front of you?
Plan geometry.
Right. Okay. So if I can go over this with you, I'd like to kind of go through basically the sort of 5 or so key attributes of the bioclimatic response that I need you to take into attention for the lab module 1. So if we take a look at this is in the DVD that's in the back. Once you plug it in, it says enter, it'll ask you some prompts and you say enter the site. Once you enter the site, you'll see some elements that look like this that are referring to building form, and that'll pop up. And then on the right-hand side, there's going to be these climate zones. And as we know by now, we're in the temperate climate zone. So here's what should be popping up first. Now, the first orientation is basically a rectangular plan and then a square, and then there's some other types of plans. I think that because your building is probably going to be more of a U shape or a hollow rectangular shape, that would be a better reference. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm ignoring the fact that I know there's parking.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this very thing for the last 2 nights. So this is a wonderful and technical, higher level conversation and a more intelligent conversation on this topic than what I've had with them. So this is perfectly timed.
So, okay. So if you take a look here, it says that the preferred orientation for a building like this would have the long axis parallel east-west, and I guess the shorter axes would be parallel to north-south. And the plan, if you move this little slider here.
Wow.
Trying to think when it starts to hit a point. Do you notice it came to the word ideal aspect ratio?
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of this. This is how you can kind of interact with it. So if you move the slider over to the right, remember you're in the temperate climate zone. This tells you that, look, if your project is predominantly east-west, where the relationship of the short axis dimension is 1, and 1.16 times that would be the long axis dimension. And no, I know it doesn't really tell you too much about the courtyard width, but it's basically kind of giving you an overall footprint orientation. So this is what I'd be looking for on your part to understand, have you been able to work with your project with this orientation? If not, why not? If you're close to this, how close are you? If you're not close to this, how far off are you, so to speak? Related to that would be this one, which I think does show up in the climate report. It's sort of a U shape. And again, if you work your slider over, notice it goes to the ideal aspect ratio to 1 to 1.6. And that the 2 wings in this case are wider, perhaps, in the 2 north-south orientation. I don't know, is an L-shaped plan possible with your project?
Yeah, this is so great. Yes, it's possible, but it's going to take some maybe smart sizing of the units,
okay.
Right? Because I can make my large pizza tomorrow night 18 pieces or 6 pieces. It's just where and how often I cut the pie, right? So if depending on the size of the apartments, yeah, they could maybe get that program in an L. But I think it's a challenge. But yeah, it's so interesting that you're doing this tonight.
Okay, so this shows you again the long axis would be predominantly east-west, and the condition of the shorter axis would be on the north-south. So, and you can see the sun path there in terms of orientation. So if we move to the next one, sorry. The next one is building orientation, and we're going to go to temperate again. So now this is saying, okay, relative to the axes north, south, east, west, where's sort of the optimum? And so as you take a look here, it's telling you that in a rectangular plan with a U-shaped corridor, you should be about, I think it's 18 degrees off of east. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Now, so you might wonder, okay, so what if I'm not, how far off of that can I can I have my project before it starts to compromise performance? So my discussions with colleagues in the HVAC, climate responsiveness field have said to me, well, whatever the optimum is, you can probably vary about 15 degrees from that and you're still okay. So that kind of gives you a bit of a benchmark, right, in terms of when you know if you're close to being in the optimum range and whether or not if you're deviating from it, whether it'll have any real consequence. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here we are. That's what's being suggested for the U shape. This is the C shape configuration, and this is the sort of the L shape configuration. And in terms of surface area to volume ratio, this is the calculation I talked about with you last time. It's a little tricky. Again, maybe I'll go over why. If we go to the U-shaped configuration again, or the hollow courtyard configuration, move our sliders over, we come to this value. And so you notice this is a ratio of about 2.3 surface area to volume. So what is surface area? Basically, it's all the exterior surface area, and that includes the floor and the roof. And that would be for the enclosed portions of the building. What is the volume? Obviously, it's the internal volume of the space that's being contained. Now, as I said last time, there's been some issues with the calculations of this, and we've gone back and forth with the authors. What I will tell you, though, is that if you're going to work with this, once again, in order to get values anywhere near this that are reasonable projections of the effectiveness of this system, you really have to keep values for major dimensions between 0 and 9. And the reason for this is if you plug in the real dimensions of your building, you're going to get values that are nowhere near this, and they're usually very small. The way I understand that is because volume is cubed and square footage is area, that usually volume increases much more rapidly when you increase scale. And so in order for them, these demonstration values that they give you are always for very small building. Well, they're not buildings at all. They're just little objects, right, so to speak. And so if you do that step, remember to divide every one of your major dimensions by the same number. Has to be the same number, such that your values go down between 0 and 9 for all the major dimensions. You'll be able to do the approximate calculation that's correct. So this is for the open one. I'm sorry about the phone. This would be the C-shaped configuration. And again, you can see in the case there, the ideal goes to about 2.0 with the courtyard kind of facing the sun. And in the L-shaped configuration, once again, move the slider over and you get to about 1.9 with the large wing facing the sun to the south side and the smaller wing sort of intersecting the north-south axis to the south. So if we go to natural lighting, I don't know that this says too much, to be honest with you. I did recommend a couple of links for you to pay attention to and to maybe use that as a way of looking at natural lighting. What you notice here basically is just a diagram that shows the sun path. But there's not necessarily a strong preference being indicated here. It's just showing you the consequences of the sun path as the sun moves over the space. So I can't tell you this is really a guideline. Does that make sense? It's more of a pattern condition that exists in terms of daylight sequencing. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind that north light and east light orientations are generally not favorable for direct gain solar. This is natural lighting, so I suspect it's really looking at not just daylight, but really daylighting, or not just natural light, but daylighting as well. If you're going to use some direct gain solar, it's probably going to come from the south or the west orientations. And I suspect that's why the west, the leg here on the west side is larger, because it can potentially be, in the late afternoon, gain some direct gain benefit. Mass and service core, I think that was something we've alluded to as well. So let's go to this configuration again. Where are they suggesting this? Does everybody see the service cores? Those are the sort of these two blocks, and then the circulation is in the back. What's the intent here? The intent here is, can you use the mass and service cores to your benefit from a climate perspective? Usually that means a corridor, which is typically does not always have to be at full conditioning. Corridors sometimes can be at higher and lower set point temperatures because they're not occupied. The argument is you're only walking through them. So in some of these options, the notion is where would you put a corridor to your benefit? And so what you see here is what we see in some projects, particularly in European projects. I've seen this where they use the corridor almost like a thermal fuse or barrier to the outside temp. And in this case, because we're in sort of a colder climate, it's along the north face because you could mitigate the number of windows there. You could maybe not put it fully conditioning, and you could use it kind of like a thermal barrier to the north face where you're more likely to have thermal losses. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure the rationale for the cores. They just seem to be dispersed along the east and the west face. I suspect the reason for that is they'd like to keep the south open. In other words, if you can get solar, in this climate, some direct gain solar will help you. So don't block it with something like a stairs or an elevator. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Similar conditions here, corridor along this side. Now I realize when I see this, and you do too, of course, that corridors can't be just here. You're obviously going to have some corridor extents here and here, right?
Yep.
Because you have to have that for the access to the apartments. And sort of similar conditions for the U-shaped option. Natural ventilation, again, kind of going to the U-shaped plan. So if we take a look on the slider once again, let's move it across. We're in the courtyard shaped building. So we hit the ideal. This one's a little harder to necessarily see how it can work for our project, and I'll explain why here in a minute. Basically, the notion of natural ventilation is they want to get as much cross ventilation as possible. That's why you see sort of windows at this point and windows at that point. The intent is to drag the air, so to speak, through the largest extent of the plan area to augment ventilation. Now, what this implies, however, is that you have one space here. Does that make sense? In other words, it's not interrupted by hallways and corridors.
Or apartments.
Right, essentially apartments. And so that's where it becomes difficult. So if you have a large corner apartment, this starts to make sense. Does everybody follow me?
Mm-hmm.
If it's just chopped up with a lot of small apartments and corridors, this may not make sense, except maybe for a ground level condition. Let's say where there's retail or some common area.
But like a two-bedroom unit, and larger.
Right.
Where they're usually on the corner because of has two faces. That could work.
Right, and maybe you could also use balconies to your benefit in that regard as well, by positioning them in such a way that might help. Here's the other condition: natural ventilation. Again, work the slider over to ideal would be to the right. Again, you notice the same basic idea, trying to use the opposite window conditions for ventilation. And sort of the last one here being the U-shape as well. Similar ideas, can't disconnect. Well, let me disconnect here, but moving the windows to the opposing sides once again, get more cross ventilation is what's recommended. The only other topic I wanted to go over just quickly was the notion of the landscape. And sorry, trying to get this to open up here.
It's not reacting.
No, not yet. Let me see. Oh, yep, hold on.
There we go.
This, for those of you that might be interested in plant materials or not, and I don't know how much time that this course will allow for that, but there are some suggestions of plants that essentially can survive in the area based on the hardiness zone and conditions here. I think if you are interested in that, you probably want to look at conditions related to native plants again in the area. That was, I think, something that perhaps Cody had talked about in LEED. So in terms of climate conditions, sorry. I'm trying to find the one that is for temperate climate. So this obviously is the preferred condition for climatic responsiveness. The notion is that the winds from the north and the west in the winter tend to be negative. Block them with something if you can, trees that are not deciduous but evergreens that block the wind. Even blocking them closer to the building with bushes perhaps. Letting deciduous trees along these orientations to the south, east, and west, because they might block the unwanted sun during some of the summer months when it's too hot for comfort and you don't want direct sun. But then when the leaves fall off, they can allow for the sun to come through, perhaps, in times of the year where you want some solar gain. Late spring, early summer typically would be cases like that. One would be to your benefit. And also in this, if you're going to have trees to the south, they should probably be smaller. So that's the notion of this idea. Again, I'm not sure how much space you have available on site to accommodate this. It might not be something that we can really work with here. So those are sort of the primaries, I would say. If you're, when we get to that next module, I would be asking, what impact do these have on your project as you've gone through this next phase? And can your project show some relationship to these optimums or not? I think in relationship to the other study for the climatic study, there are those, the psychometric bioclimatic chart that was in the climate report. Take a look at those major strategies that are there that make sense and see what consideration they can be given in the project. But I think that probably will take a bit later in the development of the project. In terms of the ASHRAE code, I would say watch your percent glazing. I think at this level, you can do some quick calculations to see where you are, remembering it's about 40%, right? As a recommended percent glazing. And I would say if you're going to have, if you consider to have more glazing on certain elevations, increase glazing percentages on the south and your west, and probably decrease them on the east, and decrease them the most on the north. So I would think projects also will probably make use of things like vestibules. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
That would make sense at all. Certainly major entry conditions.
Yeah, anytime you have like a lobby or like a connection from the outside to in, like at the rear where there's maybe service corridors that's discharging to like the courtyard or to the service realm of the project. Yeah, you'll have an airlock. You'll have a lobby that mitigates that cold air from coming in, and the chilled air from inside in the summer from escaping.
Right. And I think that maybe Professor Farlow and I had some communications about some of the program modification, spatial program, and I think hopefully there's things in there now that have the HVAC and allowance for HVAC space movement and for electrical rooms and mechanical rooms, etc. So keep those in mind. You'll need some spaces for those sorts of conditions. And then I think you're going to be having maybe like a building section by this next review. Is that right?
I think they'll probably have like a stacking section that shows yes.
Okay.
Well, for the first benchmark, yes.
Okay. So then probably having this notion again, we talked about what's your interstitial space. Mm-hmm. Interstitial space means it's somewhere between the bottom of the floor of the space above and the ceiling for the space below. And essentially, how much space are you allocating there? Can we begin to think about what it means for structural system accommodation and mechanical system accommodation? You will have sprinkler heads.
Yep.
So sprinklers will have to be in there. Of course, some horizontal plumbing will have to be there. But we tend to see a lot of these projects consolidate their plumbing into usually vertical stacks.
So Dan, can you go back to, can you escape from the landscape realm and go back to maybe the first sort of interrogation and let us look at building form for a second? So tonight, Dan, because of the fact that we're on a primary intersection of John R. and Alfred, and because we have a residential lot to the west, which has its own set of challenges vis-a-vis fire separation distance and the fact that house next door is historical. And then we're on an alley and we have a building south of us that's pretty tall. And because of the size, right, and the shape of the site itself that we're designing for, not to mention, there's a lot of commas in this sentence, sorry, not to mention all of the suggestions, right, about where retail should go from a retail and urban perspective, where the speed ramp should go and how it should come off the alley, and where garbage and trash chutes should go relative to access to the alley from within the building. When you blend all these like programs and issues and consequences together, it seems that, and then when you start to think about like the residential program itself, it seems like there's really not too many plan geometries or building forms that are suitable for this site that go beyond the 4 or 5 that are in this software.
Yeah,
and we talked about this a lot tonight. So this is, I'm stunned at that sort of correlation. And so what I'd like to suggest is that all of the students dive right into this software with their early, diagram iterations and start to validate what we've been talking about tonight, whether it's a donut shaped, right, or whether it's an L, or whether it's a C or a J, right? All of these are the things that we talked about tonight. So I think this will help you dial in what's going to be workable for you.
Well, let me add the one comment would be, you talked about a building to the south.
Yeah, the apartment building to the south.
Okay. One thing that would be helpful, I know Fosler was working on the massing study model. Is that correct? Yeah. Is it in Revit or is it in SketchUp?
I don't know if it was in Rhino. What was it in, Roger?
In Rhino.
Rhino.
Okay. Does Rhino have a sun solar path option?
Yes.
Okay. So my point would be, you probably would try to run that through with a series of images, 3-dimensional, like bird's eye view images of the area to the south, sort of looking at it from sort of the south bird's eye, maybe southwesterly or something bird's eye, and then take a look at the major periods of the year, June 21st, December 21st, what is that? Is that September 21st, looking at it from the standpoint of about 9 a.m., noon, 4 p.m., right? And then you're going to see where the shading condition is. Does that make sense? And you'll be able to get a perspective on whether or not your building may be seeing some shading conditions from that building to the south. That would probably be my starting point to understand whether or not you can have some direct gain solar, and where can you have it.
Right.
It may not be on the first floor, maybe not the second floor. You may be
maybe 4th or 5th, right?
That's it. The other point would be, if you have let's say you have this sort of open rectangular box configuration, and I don't know that this makes sense or not, but let's suppose the wing to the north was taller than the wing to the south.
Yes.
That might, again, predispose this to having more solar gain possibly for you on the long wing, because you're not being blocked by if the building to the south is blocking the south wing. That might be one way to address that.
I love that you just said that, by the way, because it's another way of saying in a more eloquent way what we were talking about earlier, which was basically you could have a donut like you have on this software for us tonight, but within the donut, right, within that iteration, you can have a variation of it, right? So it doesn't have to be a pure flat topped extrusion. It could have variation or modulation to it to promote or privilege, right, things like solar gain when it's a desirable condition. So but thinking about your building, particularly the residential program, in such a way that it's as straightforward as it can be, so that you can solve and explore all of these issues, these technical issues, is really what I've been trying to encourage.
Right. And I think the dilemma, though, when let's say you take a project form like this and you decide that the long east-west wing will be taller than the south east-west wing, looking at the question of egress and access. In other words, stair towers.
All of that starts to trigger and excite all of those other discussions. That's all. Those are all the things we've been talking about tonight. This is perfect.
Right. I mean, I think that can be a question that has to be resolved with respect to the circulation, and you don't want to be stranding portions of the building without the egress and the access they need.
Bingo.
On the parking structure side, have you been talking more about the parking conditions?
So, not the layout. We've had a few teams that have had very sort of preliminary, somewhat raw layouts of parking. I know from my experience that this will be the most difficult plan for them to work through. Right. So I would say that all of them are lagging on that, and I'm not concerned about that at this point. We probably won't see that really resolved until the second benchmark, but the goal is to move to that discussion with a lot of specificity as quickly as we can. So I've given them some prompts. The prompts are that clearly those corners where one row running north and south meets a row of parking that runs east and west, that corner is a dead corner. Those are great places for stairs, for example, or maybe elevators, but they don't necessarily always work for the residential floor above. So, right. So just giving them some tips and primers and thinking about how that speed ramp is a big element to deal with, but in terms of like killing a lot of floor space, but at the same time, you know, you can tuck program to some extent underneath it if you need to. So thinking about all of that stuff again simultaneously is really been kind of the thing I've encouraged them with.
I had one just small question as you get into later in the semester for parking. Does the city of Detroit have a maximum percentage for compact cars?
I don't know the answer to that, so I will look into that. I'll find that out from our planners tomorrow and share that with you. That's actually a great question, and I'm looking. It's hard to know from like driving around and seeing things, but actually, our friends that make pizza and own a couple of like sporting teams, and one of them is a hockey team, the other one is a baseball team. They've been doing a lot of parking lots. And I'll see if, and they've been apparently or allegedly up to code, up to the ordinance. So I'll find out if they've been indicating things like subcompact spaces, if they have charging stations, right, and the like.
Right. I just know that in some cases, as you get into the finality of trying to figure out have you met the car count.
Yeah.
That. From what I've seen with municipalities, the percentage of compact cars could vary anywhere from 10 up to 40%.
Yeah.
Where some of the more so-called progressive states will let you go that far to 40%. And
Oregon.
It may not seem like much, but the difference between 8'6" and 9'6"
is huge.
When you're talking about areas the size of yours,
yep,
make the difference in whether you're going to hit that count or not.
Yeah. So so let me find out, and then I may issue a small amendment to the program brief that gives some relief depending on what the city of Detroit offers. I think it's a great question in terms of like always prompting our students to think as architects in terms of like what is the limit of the code or the ordinance? Where do I have wiggle room? Where are there waivers? Right? Where are there exceptions? And then chasing them so that you don't have your hands tied as a designer.
Just to make sure I understand some of the structural floor to floor heights. If I remember, parking structure minimum clearing should be 7'2" for a van. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever we've got going on in there, when we start projecting the depth of beams, for example, we've got to stay at that 7'2" and above level, right?
That's right.
Okay,
That's
and
right.
On a floor-to-floor height basis, for the apartments levels, is it to target a minimum of 8 feet?
Yeah, I think 8-foot ceilings are really minimum. If you're in the 8-foot family, you want to be at 8'6" or 8'9" if possible.
Okay. Does that change for living room spaces or larger spaces?
So I think that's another good question. A couple of case studies we've seen have sort of configured like social rooms, like bedrooms and living rooms, rooms without lots of mechanical interferences in their ceilings, for example, towards the front, and then maybe wet rooms like mechanical rooms or laundry rooms, if such exists, kitchens and bathrooms to the corridor wall, so that those ceilings could be down to 7'10", right? Maybe 8 feet, so that it allows for ductwork to come in and then distribute out, or sprinklers to come in and then distribute out. So soffits in kitchens, bathrooms, closets can be lower there in those spaces than in living rooms and bedrooms that might be disposed closer to the outside wall.
And if I recall, the absolute minimum ceiling height by code is 7'3". Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But that would only be for like a bathroom or a closet.
And that's what I'm getting at. It's when if you're getting to the point where we're asking, we need some chase space.
Yep.
You know, that's where we can go if we have to.
Yes.
In terms of the first floor retail, what is your thought about floor to ceiling there?
So I think it's going to be, so I don't want to answer that with a number, but I want to say that I think that it's really going to be helpful if one of you create a single line kind of drawing that shows the ground floor as 100 and the top floor that fits within the envelope of the ordinance, right? 50 feet. And then looks at what we're talking about for the 4 residential floors, which is an assumption, right? You might be able to do 3 if you do a donut, but most of you will probably look at 4. What would those floor to floors be to make this work? And then what's left for that first floor? I would try to work towards a maximum first floor that would be a dimension taller and different than all of the residential floors.
I had kind of done that when I did the zoning ordinance.
Yes.
The 12-foot minimum for the retail, and then the 9-foot minimum for 4 floors above would give you 2 feet of interstitial space.
Yes.
So if that answers that question.
Yeah, and so you may want to like extract that plate from your brief, your research, and share it with everyone, or just tell us what plate number it is in an email so that everyone goes to that. I do remember that diagram. And in the program brief, I think I had a section that was comparable to what you just talked about.
Okay. And I know we inferred last time that Professor Farlow and I were talking about putting together a series of sort of options for structure, enclosure, HVAC, alternative energy, and we'll probably be releasing that next week as soon as we can kind of get the time to make sure that all comes together for you. So you'll have a chance to probably select some, if you will, pre-screened options for yourselves that we believe will work and be viable. And that will probably streamline some of the processes that you would go through normally to try to determine, well, what system will work and why.
Right.
So
again, streamline is really the word that we've been saying a lot this week. I haven't used that word exactly, but the meaning has been there. And again, it's really to make their lives a little bit simpler so that we don't get distracted or derailed as we're trying to move through the semester.
And it also will consolidate some discussions about why if we talk about packaging certain systems, why they're packaged the way they are, which may have to do with, the nature of the construction trades, the interface responsibility of trades, et cetera. So, and all of that does lead back to the issue of how you build the building, so to speak.
I want to mention, Dan, that, you asked about the foundations for the buildings that we're doing at Brush Park.
Right.
We have a building under construction right now that's on a larger site at City Modern Detroit. They're still working on the foundation. And because it has a very complex first floor plan relational to the floors above, and because we have 2 floors of parking below in that building, we've done a mat slab on that building. But in the building that sits on the site that our teams are designing for, we did not do a mat slab. They formed all of the column footers. They formed all of the rails for the spread footings under the walls, and that allowed, because we only had 1 floor of parking. It's a small underground. We only it's a shorter building in height. It's only 4 floors above 1 floor of retail, and it's a smaller site, and that allows for underground, like utility lines and service lines and the like, to sort of slip between 1 footer and the next, like between 2 columns, for example, without having to sort of snake their way under the slab. So it allows for that kind of flexibility. But I learned that answer today, and I asked it just for you.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll probably work on that assumption. I guess the argument would be, since the loads are less because the building isn't as tall and there's fewer dead loads of structure.
That's exactly right.
Pads were not increasing to the size that made a mat economic.
That's right.
Okay, great. I would say at this point, that's about all I have for today, in terms of some of these sort of topics, just to kind of hit these points as you move forward. And as we move to next Monday, if there are, I'd like to be able to see some of the work, if we can do that.
Yeah. So I'll bring you in, Dan, after the talk. So that would be 6:30, and then you can participate in the desk crits.
I'll try to get here as soon as possible. I just to let you know, I did get the assistance that I requested.
Oh, brilliant.
And unfortunately, the good news is that the person can help me on Monday. The bad news is they can't help me on Thursday.
That's the day you need them.
Yeah, I know. So at any rate,
I'm sorry.
It will help to kind of, because of that, though, that it will help to reduce some of the Thursday load.
That'll be good.
Because of other interface opportunities on the other day of the week. So I think I'll be able to free up, hopefully, better the Thursday situations. Although of the 2 days, you would probably be more likely to count on me getting in early on Tuesday than on Thursday. So.
Okay.
And if that does change, I'll let you know. I know that
that'll be fine.
Professor Rees said that he does have a standing client meeting, but he might be able to have that altered. So we'll see.
Okay. So I'll send the invite, and you can join when you're ready to. I'll probably just send you the link, Dan, as an email, and then you click on the link and then join in at your convenience.
That's great.
And then everyone, I'm around this weekend. If you're in that charrette mode that I encouraged you all to do and be in, if you want to converse or hang out here, we can do that, or share some emails of diagrams. I can mark them up and sort of, just like we do in the office. And then I look forward to another lecture on Tuesday with you, and more desk crits, obviously expecting to see some decisions that work towards all of the considerations that we unpacked to you this week, and then certainly tonight, which really, Dan, this topic tonight in your talk was so resonant to some of the issues that we were talking about earlier with everyone. So this was, I think, really perfect.
Okay, great. All right.
All right. Anyone else have any questions for Dan?
I do. I got the book and I have a CD, but my computer doesn't have a CD. Is there a link where we can download the system or the program, or?
Wow.
I would say I think there might be, but I don't know. I would say type in the book title and see if something pops up. I'm not 100% sure. The faculty member that's the author, though, is listed. She's with Florida International University, Shanine Vasine. She might be someone you could do a quick email to and see if she'd respond.
You know, I don't think any of my computers anymore have DVD slots, Dan.
Yeah.
So this is, well, I mean, because I use notebooks and
Right.
tablets, right? Even the computer that the college gave me doesn't have it. So
Does the LTU laptop have a fixed CD tray that doesn't eject?
say that
Yeah,
again, Hung?
we were just talking about that.
The LTU laptop have a fake CD tray that I've been trying to use it for the last 15 minutes. Doesn't work.
Oh dear. Yeah.
No,
So
if on campus with LTU, there are places where you could kind of rent the little external CD drive.
yeah, you may have to do that and convert the content from the drive to another format to drop it in as a file.
Just install it and that's it. And stay in your computer. You have
Yeah,
to.
right. Once you get it, if you have a friend or is this Nora?
Yes.
Okay, so you're at a university, right?
I'm sorry? No.
You're working at a university,
Oh, yes.
right? My thought is someone there probably has some sort of technical laptop assistance or computer assistance group somewhere that IT would have a little external CD drive you could borrow and load up and be done.
Yeah, you know what? I'll look into it. I'll see if one of my buddies can help me.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we just basically purchased one of those, and unfortunately, I don't know that there is a place where you can upload it. But I've just sort of worked by just using my own CD drive.
You know, I got to believe too that Kinko's has this capacity.
Could be.
They do everything else there for us, so it might be worth a phone call. They're always open.
Okay.
Cool.
There is a download button too. If you can access the CD, there's a download to QuickTimes button. So you can actually download each slide as if it were just a slideshow.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant.
I just simply basically upload it to my computer. That's what you're seeing right now. So.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Okay.
Nathaniel.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Good luck, Nora. Does anyone else have any observations or questions or comments? Okay, good. So I've enjoyed this week a lot, and I hope you've gotten a lot out of it. There's a lot ahead of you, but I know we can get there, and working together, I think will enable you to do that as quickly as I believe you all need to do that. So take stock of the comments that you heard this week, and please focus together on your work as you move forward. And we'll talk on Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night, Dad.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
You too. So long.